shared on YouTube. It should be on there now. It's not.
Okay, councillors, we're going to reconvene the meeting. For members of the public, firstly, would like to apologise for the technical issue that we had at the start of the meeting where members of the public would not have been able to hear what we were talking about. Just to reiterate, we gave councillors a briefing for the meeting. There were no apologies for absence. I took declarations of interest from all county councillors. I took a declaration of interest from Councillor Ansell in relation to agenda item 10. I took a declaration of interest from Councillor Sargent in relation to agenda item 9. I then gave a short announcement. I'm now going to hand over to the leader of the council who has an announcement.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Mayor. I want to begin, and unfortunately I don't think the public would have necessarily been able to hear it, by associating the administration with your remarks about the late David Marchant, Chief Executive of Castle Point Council, who passed away last week. I worked with David for 3 years on ASELA, the Association of South Essex Local Authorities, and his passion, not just for Castle Point, but for South Essex, was clear for all to see. He was always very courteous, and I know many of our officers worked with him at Castle Point before coming to Basildon. And we send our deepest condolences to his family, friends and colleagues at this time. Mr. Mayor, as this is the final council meeting of the municipal year, can I take this opportunity, as you did, to thank all councillors who are standing for election and those retiring from the council, either voluntarily or involuntarily. And I want to specifically single out Councillor Gordon, who is stepping down after 9 years as a Basildon councillor. Councillor Gordon has represented the people of Nethermain and Lee Chapel North. He was the youngest ever councillor elected to Basildon Council, aged just 19. And I think he's the only councillor to ever have lived in both Brook House and every single ward in the new town. And there's been many campaigns that Councillor Gordon has championed, from the Westgate car park fiasco through to campaigning for more council housing, but it will be his work on raising the profile and importance of mental health in our borough that he is best remembered for. Councillor Gordon was fighting for funding for Basildon's mental ill health challenge long before Oprah interviews and pandemics. He successfully managed to get the council to sign up to become mental health champions, and he has spoke both passionately and powerfully about his own struggles, which I know have inspired many people in our borough. I want to thank Councillor Gordon personally for his support for me and for his extraordinary service to our borough, and wish him all the best in his new job. Mr. Mayor, almost a year ago to the day, our borough was placed into lockdown. The full horror of the COVID pandemic was becoming commonly known, and we've all been collectively through a lot over the last 12 months. And whilst there is much to do in the recovery and much to debate tonight, I do think it is worth reflecting for a moment on this council's COVID story, because this has been a year that will be scrutinised by others in the future, and they will be the ones to pass judgments on the accomplishments and the failures of governments, councils, and all those who fought this pandemic. And I know that when it comes to scrutinising Basildon Council's response, the view will be the one I hold, of immense gratitude and pride in our council. It was on this exact day 12 months ago that I sat in the Chief Exec's office and agreed that there was a new priority for Basildon Council. There was only one policy objective: to save as many people's lives as possible. Overnight, the council transformed. And let us not forget that Basildon Council was the first council in Essex to set up our community hub, which launched on the 20th of March last year, within 48 hours and 3 days before the Prime Minister announced the first lockdown. Since then, we have helped with 16,305 COVID-related calls, nearly 10,000 emails from residents and businesses. We've made almost 20,000 befriending calls to the socially isolated. We've delivered 132 hearing aid batteries, nearly 1,000 prescriptions collected and delivered, and we have made more than 2,000 referrals to partner organisations such as food banks, volunteers, repairs and welfare checks. The virus, as we know, targeted the most vulnerable in our communities, and the public health challenges, particularly in our borough around respiratory diseases, posed enormous challenges. But so did social isolation, as I say, and our befriending team set that service up, and they are still to this day phoning over 1,000 people a week on our befriending service. And in addition, some of our most isolated residents are also being called up to 3 times a week by those officers. And further steps were taken by the council to support those who were hit hardest. We have donated £16,500 to support the borough's food banks. And we know this has been a tough year, and we've not been able to see friends and family for many of us since the pandemic began. We all know those who found this, that there will be people that we know who found this tougher than others, which is why we have given £50,000 to 12 organisations to support the work of mental health charities across our borough. And I was pleased to meet with them on Tuesday of this week to talk through how that money is helping. Over the Christmas period, as you alluded to, one of the most difficult times for all of us, the council teamed up with Basildon-based wellbeing provider Motivated Minds to raise awareness of the importance of self-care and caring for others by asking, "Are you okay?" The campaign, which encouraged people to check on their neighbours, make a phone call, has gone on to be a huge success and raise awareness of people struggling in our borough. The council has also, Mr. Mayor, been efficient and effective in its response to business. We have put in an incredible support system around businesses. In total, we have paid out around £77 million in grants in business relief to support our local businesses, and we changed our payment schedules to mean we were able to send monies within 24 hours, and we have automatically paid out further grants to businesses without the need for them to keep reapplying. I hope that next week we will have more announcements to make on how we will be able to take further grants forward when we get the detail from the Chancellor on some of the measures he announced in the budget. So for businesses watching this, there will be another round of support and we will be able to help you from the beginning of April. And the current ARG grant window is now open for those businesses. I think it's also worth as putting on record, because people may not have heard, Mr. Mayor, but thanks to your charity's effort, we took action to help those affected by the Christmas closure in the hospitality industry. And thanks to the generosity of Basildon's residents and businesses, almost £40,000 was raised for casual staff who lost out on those critical extra shifts. And our revenue and benefits team have administered that money using the criteria agreed by councillors. We've kept our residents and businesses up to date. I have held 42 Facebook Live coronavirus updates with almost 500,000 views. We've had 23 Zoom meetings with businesses, including with taxi drivers and the hospitality industry. We have put out over 100 newsletters to residents and businesses, e-newsletters, I should say, to residents and businesses. And our revenue and benefits team have conducted 3 Facebook Live Q&As to support the most vulnerable with their finance-related questions. Mr. Mayor, I also want to place on record my thanks to the NHS, because here in Basildon, we are leading the way in Essex when it comes to the vaccination programme. As of the last recorded figures, 56,207 residents of our borough have received at least one vaccination. This equates to 35% of our over 16 population. 94% of our over 80s have received their vaccinations. 94% of the 75 to 80s have received their vaccinations. 93% of the 70 to 75-year-olds have received theirs. 87% of the 65 to 70-year-olds, 59% of 60 to 65-year-olds, and 17% of the under 60s have already been vaccinated here in Basildon. This is a brilliant set of statistics for Basildon, and it proves that when you give contracts and responsibility to the NHS rather than Conservative Party donors, things do get done. But Mr. Mayor, whilst we reflect on the achievements that we have made, it is with immense gratitude that we thank all of our key workers and council staff. They will never forget this year, and we can never forget the debt of gratitude we owe them. The human side of COVID is vast, and I've been speaking to many people working in NHS settings, and it has been more than incredibly challenging. It's been devastating for many people. Whilst those key workers have done amazing things to keep our borough moving, the NHS above all else has stood up. And when you talk to those nurses I've done in the last week, they tell you about the heartbreaking task of going into work and holding the hands of perfect strangers as they died, without their family and friends near them. These are our friends, these are our neighbours, these are NHS heroes living in our community. They have had to set up iPads and dealt with families grieving, unable to attend bedsides and funerals. They are heroes, and what they have done and the emotional toll it has taken on them is enormous. It was with gratitude we all clapped on a Thursday evening, and it is with gratitude that I am delighted to support the motion tonight to give the NHS across our borough the freedom of the borough at an extraordinary council meeting on the 27th of May, and we will debate that later. But recognising local heroism and extraordinary service is important. And in Basildon, we do not do this anywhere near enough, and we need to change that. So, Mr. Mayor, I can also announce this evening that the Basildon Basildon Council administration will also be nominating the following 6 individuals to also receive the freedom of the borough. Firstly, we will nominate Ken Porter for services to our borough's heritage. Ken is currently the chair of Basildon Heritage, and he is known to many of us for the newsletters and updates that we receive. Our heritage is so important to the council, and Ken's knowledge and passion for our whole borough is exemplary. Second, we will nominate Margaret Frey for services to Langdon. Margaret is currently the chair of the Over 50s Club in Langdon, a position she has held for almost a decade. She has helped to fight to keep the Over 50s Club going, the hot meal service operational, and fought successfully for investment in services for elderly residents. Third, we will nominate Christine Barlow for services to Bowers Gifford and parish councils. Christine has been the parish clerk at Bowers Gifford Parish Council, as well as supporting other neighbouring parish councils for the past decade. Neighbourhood plans are important to us. They will be coming forward, and councillors, if they are minded to, will be supporting them in the next round of the local plan. Christine has been engaging with the council positively in order to make neighbourhood plans a reality. Next, we will nominate Steve Newman for services to the Wickford Memorial Park and Heritage. Steve is the chair of the Wickford War Memorial Association, and for many of us, the Wickford Memorial Park is the jewel in the crown of our parks and our green spaces in the borough, and Steve has been instrumental in honouring the lives and the legacies of Wickford's fallen. Next, we will nominate Steve Mitchell for services to our borough's leisure sector and his role in the Basildon Sport England local delivery pilot. Steve is chair of Active Basildon and has played an important role in the promotion of health and well-being. And finally, Mr. Mayor, we will nominate Phil McLaren for services to our borough's homeless. Phil is inspiring and has helped many people to understand the real issues behind homelessness and speaks powerfully about her own story. She has worked on the delivery of the night shelter in Basildon over the last 5 years and the creation of 58-7. Mr. Mayor, I am sure the council will join me and recognise the huge contributions that these people have made to the borough, and I hope that when we are given the chance to debate and to support, all members will support these nominations. Because the human cost of the pandemic may have been devastating, we may all look back at 2020, 2021 with sadness for what we've lost, but we will also do it with pride in the way our borough responded and the gratitude for the people in our lives. There will be brighter times ahead for Basildon, Mr. Mayor, and we will bounce back stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. I have an announcement now from the Chairman of Neighbourhood and Public Spaces, Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I first of all associate my remarks with Councillor Callaghan regarding the Chief Exec of Castle Point, and also fully support the nominations he has put forward for the freedom of the borough. I'd like to refer first of all to the motion approved by this council relating to the deposit return scheme. We've now had a response just this week from the government, or from the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. I'll read out the piece which really associates with what the motion was about. The UK government committed in the 2018 Resources and Waste Strategy to introduce a deposit return scheme. We are seeking powers in the Environment Bill to enable us to establish deposit return schemes, the purpose of which is to secure an increase in recycling and reuse of materials and to reduce the incidence of littering and fly tipping. Since our first consultation on introducing DRS in England, Wales and Northern Ireland in 2019, the government has been developing proposals for DRS containers using further evidence and ongoing engagement with stakeholders. The specific details of the DRS will be presented in a second consultation in 2021. I encourage you and the elected members of Basildon to respond to the consultation when it is published. I'm told that is likely to be in June. Can I now refer to a few things that are happening which I think were important to members? Some will remember on the NMPS committee, we put some members' investment money in for some additional CCTV in Lake Meadows. Well, I'll just let the members know that installation will commence on the 22nd of March and should be fully commissioned by the 30th of March. Also, there was a proposal for some CCTV at Great Gregory in the Nethermain. That has now progressed to the point where the CCTV installation contractor has been appointed, and we're now getting quotes from UK Power Networks, and work will commence 19th of April on the installation of the CCTV there. We will also be introducing park wardens into our parks during April. Members will also be appreciative of the fact that we've now put £120,000 into the budget, which will start probably in May for Langdon Hills Recreation Ground, and a further £150,000 for Swanmead Recreation Ground, where the play equipment was removed after vandalism and fire damage last year. And only today, in the Beauchamps Field extension to the Wickford Memorial Park, with the Woodlands Trust and with the help of the Friends of Wickford Memorial Park, we started planting the 3,500 trees as a start for that particular development. Can I finish, Mr. Mayor, by, as chairman of NMPS, thanking all the staff that I've been working with for the last almost 2 years, and that has been from talking to the refuse collectors right through to the chief executive. And can I say that the support that I have had as chairman has been fantastic. And can I ask the chief executive, please, to convey my thanks to all the staff who've been particularly helpful to me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harrison. I now have a final announcement from the Chairman of Strategic Planning and Infrastructure, Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to begin by associating myself totally with the remarks that you made yourself earlier and the Leader of the Council in his statement today. I'd like to update full Council on announcements that we made in Strategic Planning Infrastructure Committee meeting last night relating to funding available to support neighbourhood plans coming forward. I'd also like to make full Council aware of the consultation on local cycling walking improvement schemes. The consultation is currently running live. And as I said, it's the Strategic Planning Infrastructure Committee meeting last night. It's vital that we have as many responses from residents across this borough as possible. I'm sure we all want to have sustainable transport. Local cycling walking improvement plans is a central part of growing our sustainable transport plans across this borough. And I encourage all residents to take part in the consultation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ferguson. I don't seem to have any further announcements. Therefore, we shall now move on to agenda item 5, petitions. I've not been advised of any petitions to be submitted by members. We therefore move on to agenda item 6, public question time. There is a period of 30 minutes for public questions. If any questions aren't reached during that time, they will be responded to in writing following the meeting. There have been 2 questions received from a member of the public as set out within the agenda. I'll now ask Mr. Barlow to be admitted to the meeting. I believe he's just been admitted. Mr. Barlow, you'll be entitled to ask 1 supplementary question after your initial question. If you'd like to read out question 1 now, please, Mr. Barlow.
To ask Councillor Kerry Smith, given that it's anticipated that COVID-19 vaccinations will become ongoing requirements for a couple of years at least, what plans does the Housing and Communities Committee have to help challenge disinformation at a local level to ensure that those who may have been subject to said disinformation but are not yet eligible for a COVID vaccine do take up the jab?
Thank you, Mr. Barlow. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd like to thank Mr. Barlow for yourself, Mr. Mayor, to ask this important question, because I think for residents, if you start looking on the internet, you can find all sorts of answers with COVID. Most of them are not factual. The short answer to Mr. Barlow's question for yourself, Mr. Mayor, this function is led by the County Council. They have to lead on this particular point. With regards to Basildon Council and my committee, if there are certain things that pop up, Councillor Spence, the Cabinet Member at Essex, regularly liaises with myself and the leader. And if we see something that's not right, maybe the messaging could be improved, Councillor Callaghan's very quick to jump onto Twitter to advise the County Council's press team. One item my committee has dealt with is to ensure everyone gets the vaccine, is the information leaflet was put around before Christmas to every door when the present lockdown started. And there was no option to get a copy in Braille, in another language, because whoever's here, they need to get the vaccine. And I use my team that answers to me at Housing and Communities, my diversity officer, led by Dengue, and she's made vigorous representation to County that all such literature has to be in accessible format. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Mr. Barlow, do you have a supplementary question? If you can just unmute. Thank you, Mr. Barlow.
I don't have a supplementary question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barlow. We'll then therefore move on to your second question to Councillor Harrison. Over to you.
What enforcement powers does the council have to stop events going ahead in public parks if there is potential risk of a breach of UK law that is known about prior to or during the event?
Thank you, Mr. Barlow. If you could just mute. Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As landlords of the public parks, we have ultimate control over the events that are allowed to proceed through the booking process.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Mr. Barlow, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Were Councillor Harrison or his team of officers to know about a breach, would they act to stop the event going ahead to protect the health, safety and well-being of the public?
Thank you, Mr. Barlow. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I said, as landlords, we have the ultimate control over any event that's allowed to proceed through the booking process, and controls are already in place, including a requirement for appropriate risk assessment. Large events are also invited to engage with our safety advisory group, a multi-agency group, including the council, emergency services and the Highways Authority, to ensure that appropriate advice and information is provided to support an organiser to deliver a safe event. If a particular event is a cause for concern in relation to COVID controls, the council has powers under the Health Protection, Coronavirus Restrictions, Local Authority Enforcement Powers and Amendment England Regulations 2020 to serve restriction notices, or alternatively to seek the support of the Director of Public Health to serve a direction under the Coronavirus Act 2020. The coronavirus powers do not replace existing powers of both the council and partners under other legislation, for example, licensing, health and safety at work.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison, and thank you, Mr. Barlow, for attending this evening's meeting and for submitting your questions. We now move on to members' question time. There's a period of 30 minutes for members' questions. If any questions aren't reached during that time, they will be responded to in writing following the meeting. There have been 7 questions submitted by members of the council this evening. Can I remind members that only 1 supplementary question is now permitted per question. Question 1 is from Councillor Dadds to Councillor Callaghan, the leader of the council. Councillor Dadds, if you could read out your question, please.
Councillor Callaghan, what does the leader of the council intend to do if a corporate sponsor cannot be found to bridge the £840,000 funding gap for the Basildon Youth Zone?
Thank you, Councillor Dadds. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I thank Councillor Dadds for his question and for the opportunity he affords me to once again talk about the brilliant youth zone that this administration is delivering for every single 8 to 19-year-old across the borough. As Councillor Dadds knows, this will be a state-of-the-art facility in the heart of Basildon that will offer young people a purpose-built facility offering a wide range of activities, including dance, sport, music, media, employability and mentoring. The youth zone would include a 4-court sports hall with facilities for indoor tennis, badminton, gymnastics, netball, basketball, and a separate climbing wall. There will also be a fitness suite with the latest gym and boxing equipment and an outdoor multi-use games area. The youth zone will also have a kitchen and a cafe selling affordable, healthy food and drink, as well as multi-purpose areas for dance, music, arts and crafts, gaming, DJing, and martial arts. This will undoubtedly be the best youth service provision in Essex and arguably the entire East of England region. So clearly it should be welcomed by all, and indeed it has been welcomed by major donors and businesses across Basildon. The high level of membership take-up and daily visits will generate a revenue for the Basildon On-Side charity, and the facility will be able to be used and hired during the day until 3 p.m. by local businesses, preschools, nurseries and organisations, which will also generate an income. This should not, but often is, overlooked by Councillor Dadds. This will be a community facility with the functionality to be open from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. Now, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Dadds' question itself is not factually accurate because it alludes to a corporate sponsor singular. Now, as you and I appreciate, perhaps Councillor Dadds less so, facts matter. And in short, the Basildon Youth Zone will be supported by multiple corporate sponsors. So it is not the case that the Basildon On-Side charity needs to find one donor for the £840,000 as his question infers. Since the summer of 2020, On-Side have been working with major businesses and sponsors to secure funding for the site. I can confirm that together we're already speaking to the 5 largest businesses in Basildon about sponsorship of the Youth Zone, and they have all agreed in principle to donating prior to the planning application being granted. Just this week, the CEO of the council met with another large business in Basildon who also indicated that they want to be part of the youth zone and to donate. The council will also be asking all of the council's contractors to donate each year to the youth zone. Last year, all of our contractors donated £500,000 to various CSR projects around our borough. Major contractors such as Morgan Sindall, Pinnacle and Riverview are already being spoken to, and within our contracts, we now place a big onus on social value and corporate responsibility. So this gives the council a further opportunity to find funding for the Basildon Onside charity. Next, the Basildon Onside charity is also talking to foundations such as the Jack Petchey Foundation, who support youth projects across Essex. These foundations have been incredibly forthcoming in supporting onside youth zones all over the country. And of course, this administration will be using Section 106 contributions to levy obligations onto developers who are building houses, offices and retail units in the borough to obligate them to make financial contributions towards the long-term running of the youth zone and investing in our young people. Finally, and I'm confident Councillor Dadds will know this because he will have read the Conservative Party manifesto cover to cover, the council and Onside, now that planning permission has been granted, will be eligible to access the government's Youth Investment Fund from May 2021, which was designed by the Department for Culture, Media and Sport to support onside youth zones because of their positive impact on young people. Of course, if at any point Essex County Council decide to step up and fulfil their responsibility of providing world-class youth services in Basildon, I'd be more than happy to use their fund to support the delivery of these services. In summary, Mr. Mayor, there are 6 key revenue streams available to the council to secure multiple corporate sponsorships to deliver the youth zone. The high level of membership and usership envisaged, the fact it is being located in the biggest economy on the Thames Estuary after Canary Wharf, with major businesses committed already to donating. The fact we have foundations who support young people in the area already operational, obligations on council contracts, obligations on developers, and of course, government funding. Now, I know the Conservative Party voted to remove the youth zone from their alternative budget, and they voted against granting planning permission for the youth zone on Tuesday evening. But thankfully, there are more people in this borough who believe in Basildon and in our young people than the 18 opposition members on this council. So given the multitude of revenue options available to Basildon Onside charity, I would urge Councillor Dadds to stop talking down investment in our young people and to start talking up Basildon as a regional leader of the youth service provision. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Councillor Dadds, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Callaghan, do you agree with me and the residents of Langdon? It's time for you to stop lying to them and come clean about the Langdon Community Centre.
Councillor Dadds, that question is not in relation to your original question on the youth zone. Do you have a question you'd like to put to Councillor Callaghan in relation to your question on the youth zone?
Yes, please.
Please ask that then.
Yes, please. Can you tell me, can you come clean with the public that all the services that youth zone that you've just described is already available within the borough? And furthermore, there is no magic money tree. This is a dream project like your arena, your tower blocks, your swimming pool, 9 million.
Councillor Dadds, as a previous mayor, you understand how you expect a member to phrase a question. Can you please phrase your question to Councillor Callaghan? Otherwise, we'll be moving on. Councillor Dadds, if you could unmute Councillor Dadds, please. If you could unmute, please, Councillor Dadds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Callaghan, do you agree with me? You need to come clean with the members of the public about the youth zone. The services and activities described are already provided by a number of providers within the borough. And furthermore, there is a black hole in the finance. You must accept the truth. There is no magic money tree. You've suggested you will plant 1 million trees, but they are not money magic trees.
Thank you, Councillor Dadds. Councillor Callaghan.
I'm sure that sounded better this morning in the bathroom mirror than it did just then. But part of the problem is, of course, that when you comprehensive answer, as I gave Councillor Dadds, it's very difficult to think on your feet. And I know Councillor Dadds struggles with that. But let me just say, in terms of the answer to the question, there isn't a black hole because the council in both last year's budget and this year's budget has committed to £400,000 of ongoing revenue. I would also say that Onside Youth Zone have raised £187 million in the last 13 years, including over 40 million in private capital donations. And their current youth zones are running at an £18 million a year in revenue. So I suppose when you hear Councillor Dadds talk down the services that we are providing, and of course he's right, there are services around our borough, such as, and I think of the sporting village, but the reality is the sporting village is not accessible to many of our young people. It isn't used by many of our young people, and it is too expensive for many of our young people. This will be 50 pence per visit to the youth zone. 50 pence versus a massive membership fee in order to go to the sporting village. So you cannot compare the two in terms of their provision for young people. But when I come back to the point around the finances, because the finances are there, they are secure, and it is going to last for as long as there is the political will to keep this going. And if the Conservative Party make it their ambition to stop the youth zone, and that is a political choice for them, of course. But £187 million in the last 13 years, £40 million in private capital and £18 million per year in revenue for youth zones in Barking and Dagenham, in Cumbria, in Croydon, and in other parts of the country, Wigan, Grimsby. So I suppose the question back to Councillor Dadds is, why is he so sure that Basildon will fail where everywhere else has succeeded? I have far more belief in Basildon than Councillor Dadds. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. We now move on to question number 2, which is from Councillor Melissa McGeorge to Councillor David Harrison. Councillor McGeorge, if you read your question, please.
I'm going to apologise now for the crying baby in the background. What services will Basildon Youth Zone offer to young people when it is opened?
Thank you, Councillor McGeorge. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Councillor McGeorge. I could opt to refer you to an earlier answer given by Councillor Callaghan, but I would have done, but having heard Councillor Dadds, I think I'll repeat some of the stuff. The comprehensive facilities at the Youth Zone will enable young people to participate in a wide range of sports and physical activities, including football, badminton, netball, basketball, cricket, climbing, martial arts, boxing and fitness training, amongst others. They will be able to engage at every level, from just having a go to developing skills and engaging competitively. Young people at the Youth Zone will be able to access a broad range of arts and media opportunities. The facility will have a specialist dance and performing arts studio, film and music suites, and art and craft workshops. Support will also be available for young people around personal health and well-being issues, including sexual health, relationships, stress, drugs and alcohol. The Youth Zone will link in with existing services in the area to ensure it is supporting young people to access the information, advice and the guidance they really need. For those that need more individual focused support, a mentoring program will be a valuable resource. The Youth Zone will offer a range of outdoor experiences, including using the area's local resources or potentially travelling further afield to broaden horizons. Onside want young people to play a real role in the running of their Youth Zone and to have a clear and coherent voice in the wider community. The Youth Zone will therefore support young people to become more connected to what's going on around them and to develop their leadership skills. Onside recognises that having the right skills and support is key to getting ahead. With the help of partners and local businesses, the Youth Zone will support young people to get on the right path for the future.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Councillor McGeorge, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, thank you. Doesn't that sound like a fantastic centre? Can I just confirm, what are the ages of people that will be able to access the Youth Zone?
The ages are anyone between the ages of 18 and 19 or up to 25 if you've got special needs. I think that is a very, very important thing. It's catering for everybody, and that's everyone across the borough. For those who decide that they don't think a youth zone is a good idea, they should talk to young people across the borough. I found it strange that as a Wickford councillor, I've spoken to young people here. I've got grandchildren. I've spoken to them and others. I've talked to someone who runs 2 organisations in the town, and they are quite happy for young people to do it. They offer something on a Friday night only, but that will carry on. But the rest of the time, the other 6 days a week, the youngsters can go to the youth zone. Onside will make arrangements for them to get there. And when I see a local councillor, Councillor Carol Morris, at a planning committee, puts every possible reason up front to oppose a youth zone, which will benefit young people of Wickford, I get very annoyed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Question number 3 is from Councillor McGeorge to Councillor Kerry Smith on Clarion. Councillor McGeorge.
Thank you. What steps are the council taking to hold Clarion Housing to account for their housing stock in Vange, which is in a terrible state of disrepair and often leaves residents living in terrible conditions for weeks and months on end?
Thank you, Councillor McGeorge. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor McGeorge. I'll keep it short and sweet because I know you've got little one there, but if you can do that all the night way through, you might be headhunted by the Conservatives to keep one of their babies in their group in line. Right, let's answer your question.
Keep it to answering the question, please, Councillor Smith.
I'm just praising women's skills, you know, it's a good thing. We've got to
answer the question. Thank you,
here, Mr. Mayor. We should be praising women, never denigrating them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Right, and to Councillor McGeorge, I've written it down because there's quite a lot of myself and other members have worked really hard on this because what's happened with Clarion in your ward of Vange is not acceptable. So the council has met with senior officers from Clarion on a number of occasions to hold them to account for the management of their stock and their investment plans, and we will continue to do so. We have carried out a number of joint estate action days on the estate with Clarion and Swan to encourage wider engagement, and there will be more of these once we're out of lockdown. Myself and Councillor McGarren and the leader have been in regular contact with a significant number of residents in the area who are unhappy with the level of service they receive from their landlord, which is Clarion, and consequently they have recently written to all residents of the Vange 3-4 estate, along with a survey encouraging them to come forward and share their experiences of living on the estate, and in particular to speak to him about their living standards. Regardless of who their landlord is, we believe that all Basildon residents deserve a good level of service, and the council always tries to work closely with other registered social landlords to improve the estates and communities. A dedicated email address has been set up for any resident in Vange to raise their issues with Clarion. We are committed to working with Clarion to drive up standards in the process, and will take whatever action necessary to ensure all residents have access to good quality accommodation.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor McGeorge, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, please. Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. That was a very full answer there. Can I just have your commitment that you'll keep residents updated on the progress with this to ensure that this doesn't keep happening?
100%. You have my assurance, Councillor McGeorge. As both your constituents and my constituents share a boundary where Vange has been sliced up into 3 different wards. I have constituents who've got family in your ward, in Councillor Ansell's ward, and we all magically work together with these particular problems that pop up. So, yes, that's not a problem, because if I let down your constituents, Councillor McGeorge, with this issue, they may well have a cousin in Goldings Crescent who won't be happy with yours truly. So you've got a bullet to my head there. So I'll make sure you're looked after. Keep doing what you're doing, Councillor McGeorge, with Councillor McGurran, and Vange will have it great. They won't have to move to Dorset to get a decent house to live in.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor, question number 4 from Councillor Adeniran to Councillor Jack Ferguson. Councillor Adeniran.
Thank you, Chair. Will the chairman of the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee update the council on when monies held by Essex County Council for infrastructure will be released and spent on Basildon infrastructure projects?
Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And may I first of all thank Councillor Adeniran for his question. I know that the question he's asking here is a question that a number of residents ask when developments come forward within the borough. And I think it also is quite right that I take this opportunity to explain that so many developments that come forward, there are requirements of Section 106 contributions for infrastructure improvements, particularly relating to education and roads. And unfortunately, so much of that infrastructure money is being held by Essex County Council. And we don't have control over that. We don't have control over when it's released. So Councillor Adeniran has asked when those monies were released. He wants to know. I want to know too. At the Strategic Planning Infrastructure Committee meeting in November, I received a report detailing where the contributions of Section 106 contributions to education and how much they should be. And it had a use-by date on there. A use-by date that is so much in the future that we don't know where it is. I don't want a use-by date. I want a build-by date. And that is what I'm seeking to do tonight by bringing forward a motion that gives us the opportunity to find that out.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Adeniran, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Ferguson, for that answer. I guess in the event and when we eventually can take back control of these funds, can you shed more light as to the exciting or to the nature of the exciting infrastructure projects that Basildon could possibly see by the use of these funds?
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you, Councillor Adeniran, for your supplementary question there. And we heard at the budget meeting in February exciting plans across our borough to bring jobs to this borough, to bring improved transport plans, to bring improved facilities for, and we heard tonight, the youth zone facility for young people across our borough. But we've also seen the need for increased investment in education. This administration, in its budget, put £3 million in for inspiring futures for young people to be educated in this borough and to stay living within this borough. And I look forward, once we take back control, to bringing investment forward so that everyone can enjoy the opportunities of the infrastructure that we'll be bringing across.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Adeniran, you have a further question for Councillor Ferguson. Question number 5.
Yes, thank you, Chair. What assurances can the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee Chairman give full council that new housing developments across the borough will lead to increases in infrastructure spending locally and improved environmental sustainability?
Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Councillor Adeniran, and thank you again for your question here relating to new housing developments and the opportunities of infrastructure spending locally and what that will lead to in environmental sustainability. In November this year, this council launched the Basildon First Charter that set out ambitious targets for making sure that the new developments that we see come before us meet the expectations of residents and respond to our residents' needs. Last week at the Neighbourhoods and Public Spaces Committee, we voted for the first ever climate change policy that this council has ever had. This administration will be the most environmentally sustainable administration this council has ever seen. But I also take pride and am delighted by the work of our officers. I note from the recent planning application that was approved on the planning committee of the 24th of February that brought forward £3.5 million forward in Section 106 contributions to increase the infrastructure spending locally, to tackle health inequalities, to improve transport facilities, to bring jobs to our residents in this borough. So when this administration says we're bringing forward infrastructure, when we say infrastructure first, when we talk about sustainability, we mean it and we'll deliver it.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Adeniran, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, Chair. Thank you for that answer. It's incredibly insightful and exciting to hear. What thoughts has the chairman given to how we can measure our progress and in time success in regards to environmental sustainability going forward?
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Adeniran, for your question. As I said in the Neighbourhoods and Public Spaces Committee last week, we voted for the first climate change policy that this council has ever undertaken, and underpinning that will be an ambitious strategy setting out the targets and milestones that we will seek to meet. Over the last 2 years, we've increased the number of electric charging points across this borough in significant levels. I referenced in my update tonight the importance of residents consulting to the local cycling, walking improvement plans consultation to ensure that sustainable transport is brought forward and we bring the sustainable transport measures that our residents need. We've heard tonight around, we heard at the budget meeting last month, and I said earlier on, around the improved transport hubs that we've put in Basildon Town Centre that will all improve our environmental sustainability. And I look forward to seeing this being carried out.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Question number 6 is from Councillor Andrew Ansell to Councillor Aidan McGurran. Councillor Ansell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So my question to Councillor McGurran is, can you explain what support the council has provided to businesses to protect jobs during the COVID crisis?
Thank you, Councillor Ansell. Councillor McGurran.
With pleasure, Councillor Ansell. This council has been at the forefront of protecting jobs and helped to keep business afloat during the pandemic. Between March 2020 and September 2020, the council's Revenue and Benefits Service have supported 1,460 businesses with £31.3 million in business grants, 2,245 businesses with £36 million in business rates relief. Not only that, since October 2020, we have supported businesses even further. 332 businesses received an open scheme grant totaling £217,000 to cover local restrictions of rateable premises that are open but severely impacted by COVID. 994 businesses have received a closed scheme grant totaling £10.87 million to cover local restrictions of rateable premises that are forced to close. 1,049 businesses have received an additional restricted grant to date, totaling £4.19 million, as set out by the policy agreed by Basildon members. 429 businesses have received a business adaptations grant, totaling £154,000 to date, and 14 pubs have received the Christmas £1,000 payment. But important though providing financial assistance to businesses, the council has also been there as a vital point of contact for local businesses throughout the crisis. The leader alluded to some of this earlier. Within days, we'd establish our business hub as a focal point for businesses to ask coronavirus-related questions on working guidance and financial support. This is available on our website by dedicated phone and voicemail or dedicated email. 42 leader Facebook updates have taken place with an incredible almost 500,000 views. Even more incredible when you consider only about half of those were from the leader and members of the Callahan family. 23 Zoom meetings with businesses, including taxi drivers and the hospitality sector, have taken place. Some of these were attended by the leader and myself. The Keep the Lights On campaign, which the Mayor alluded to earlier, and the leader, was set up specifically to support casual workers in the hospitality trade. And thanks to everyone who raised around £38,000 for that fantastic effort by businesses and ordinary individuals as well. Around 100 e-newsletters were distributed to resident and business subscribers on coronavirus-related updates and how to access financial support. Our Revs and Bens managers took part in 3 Facebook Live question and answer sessions, which were incredibly helpful. 2 letters were delivered to residents giving details of how to contact our community hub, council services and public health information to reach those not on social media or email. 2 council magazines were distributed, giving people contact information and updates. As an administration, we know the economic effects of the pandemic are a long way from being over, but this council will remain at the forefront in the efforts to protect businesses and jobs, however long that takes. And I would like to thank the Revenue and Benefits team for the outstanding work they've done and continue to do.
Thank you, Councillor McGurran. Councillor Ansell, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank Councillor McGurran for his detailed and insightful answer to my first question, and also for his non-stop efforts, to help Basildon bounce back. My supplementary question is to ask Councillor McGurran, what has been your assessment of the COVID community hub set up by Basildon Council last year?
Thank you,
Andy. Quite frankly, I think that the response, the community hub and business hub has been magnificent. not just the speed with which they reacted, but the manner of which they reacted. It was an incredibly, and still is, an incredibly difficult time for our businesses. They have worked hard to ensure that businesses do stay afloat and that people's jobs are protected. As I mentioned, there's been a lot of Zoom meetings with businesses, particularly the more threatened sectors like hospitality, taxi drivers. Myself and the leader have attended some of those. There was a particularly somber one just before Christmas where it stuck in my mind a lot. A lot of members of the hospitality trade, you could see just how serious the situation was for them. They were contemplating having to close the businesses down, having to let long-standing loyal members of staff go, and not knowing where their income was going to come from in the future. Despite all of that, a significant number of them praised the Business Hub and the Revenue and Benefits team for the constant dialogue, constant contact, help and advice that they provided that had kept them going to that point. So again, I think enormous credit is due to that particular team, and they also did contrast it with the lack of direction from other authorities, and I won't name and shame them, but you can probably imagine who some of them are. And also, I would like to say, on a serious note, praise the lead of Facebook sessions as well, because a lot of people, both businesses and individuals, have said it was very important in that personal contact, and again, which was sadly lacking from some of our MPs. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Councillor McGowan. And sadly, we've now reached the end of members' question time. Therefore, Councillor Ansell, you will receive a written response to question number 7 on job seeker support. We now move on to agenda item 8, business remaining from the last council meeting. Council resolved that the motion is set out in the agenda from Councillor Yaqub, which was submitted to the council meeting on the 10th of December 2020, stand referred to the next ordinary council meeting due to the guillotine being reached. I therefore call Councillor Yaqub to present her motion. You have 10 minutes, Councillor Yaqub.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, breastfeeding in public has long been stigmatized. We live in a society where women are still being made to feel ashamed and humiliated for the simple act of feeding their babies, where women are being asked to breastfeed in toilets, behind curtains and in storage rooms, where women are still being asked to leave restaurants for offending customers with the sight of a breastfeeding child. We still have to overcome the judging glares and the calls to cover up, as if feeding a child was an act of indecency. It is no wonder that 9 out of 10 mums feel uncomfortable breastfeeding in public. We should be empowering these women to be proud of the miracles that their bodies can perform. It's a superpower to be able to produce bioactive liquid gold that protects your baby from viruses and infections. It's incredible that breast milk increases IQ levels. It's fascinating how a nursing baby can send signals through its saliva to the mammary gland receptors, which then compel the mother's body to produce tailor-made antibodies when the baby is sick. But instead of feeling proud, these women feel like they need to hide this beautiful act of sustaining and nourishing life whilst out in public. This is the reality of a mother that has chosen to breastfeed. If she has managed to get through the aftermath of childbirth, hormonal changes, baby blues, and somehow managed to initiate breastfeeding, she must now deal with the pressure of negative public perceptions. This means that most women stop breastfeeding earlier than they had anticipated, while some women confine themselves to their homes to maintain breastfeeding, but then have to deal with the inevitable impact this has on their mental health. This is one of the reasons why, although 81% of women initiate breastfeeding in the UK, only 1% are exclusively breastfeeding at 6 months. Mr. Mayor, this is a public health imperative. The rates of breastfeeding in the UK are among the lowest in the world, costing the NHS to the sum of 48 million. And whilst health practitioners and midwives are doing their best to support mothers to breastfeed, we must acknowledge that the responsibility of improving breastfeeding rates cannot fall on women alone. As a society, we must confront a culture that is often hostile towards breastfeeding. We must acknowledge that on one hand, we are urging women to breastfeed, whilst on the other hand, we are denying women an environment in which breastfeeding can flourish. This is why I've brought forward this motion here tonight. Making Basildon breastfeeding friendly through a localised initiative is an important step towards addressing this public health priority. I hope that each and every member will be able to support this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Yaqub. And I believe you have Councillor Brown to second your motion. Councillor Brown, you have up to 5 minutes to second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion aims to help parents feel supported when feeding their infants in public, however they choose to feed their infants. This will be achieved through the Breastfeeding Friendly Scheme, which supports commercial health and community settings to facilitate greater acceptance and encouragement of breastfeeding. This will help promote an environment where mothers feel comfortable and confident to breastfeed their infant in public. Unlike many of our European and global neighbours, since the Industrial Revolution, our society has become a bottle feeding culture. This leads to huge inequalities, not only in health outcomes within our society, but also in our confidence to feed our infants when out and about. Some parents can feel vulnerable and self-conscious about feeding their infants in public. This is often made worse when they receive negative reactions, particularly when a child is being breastfed. Women should never be made to feel uncomfortable about breastfeeding in public. Many do not realise it is illegal for anyone to ask a breastfeeding woman to leave a public place, such as a cafe, shop, or on public transport. Years ago, this happened to me more than once. And although such experiences are less common today, they do still happen. This can isolate parents and restrict them from leaving their homes. It also causes women to give up breastfeeding far sooner than they may wish to, which we know has health impacts and poor outcomes. Support this motion and give our parents the confidence to feed their infants in public areas, however they may choose to do so. The medical professionals agree, increases in breastfeeding reduces illness in young children. Breastfeeding has health benefits for the infants and mothers, and also reduces costs to the NHS through reduced hospital and hospital admissions for the treatment of infants with infections. The benefits of the Breastfeeding Friendly Scheme, though, are not exclusive to mothers and their infants. It's also shown that in areas where this has been implemented, it has benefited local business, attracting new customers. Young mothers recommend welcoming venues, and this word of mouth travels quickly through social media and other forums. It helps create positive images for those businesses, which in turn increase their customer loyalty and therefore their profitability. And what's more, it doesn't cost them anything to do so. Ensuring the people of our borough will have good health is a priority for this alliance. And as we tackle the underlying roots of causes of poor health and demand excellent public health services in this borough, we must also recognise that breastfeeding and enabling those to feel comfortable to do so will also help this health priority. If you want to support any woman to have the opportunity to sustain breastfeeding for as long as they choose to do so, improve the health outcomes for this borough while supporting business, you have no choice but to support this motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I have 4 speakers who have indicated to speak on this motion. I've got Councillor Carol Morris, Councillor Sargent, Councillor Rimmer and Councillor Harrison. We'll start with Councillor Carol Morris. Thank you, Councillor Morris. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. No, I shan't need that, I don't think. I mean, we all know that that breastfeeding is best for the baby, and I wouldn't say otherwise. What I would like to say, though, is that often when we have campaigns or actions taken to try and remedy something that is wrong, they go a little bit too far, and we end up what I describe as the pendulum swings from one side to the other and doesn't stop in the middle. Now, the reason I bring this point to your notice is because I am aware that there are a number of women who would very much have liked to have fed baby themselves, but unfortunately medical reasons have meant that they've been unable to. And I'm just asking that we handle the matter sensitively so that those women do not feel demonized by this, by these actions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Councillor Sargent. You have 5 minutes, Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm more than happy to support the motion, but I'd like to speak about the positivities of breastfeeding, because I have the long time that I have been a councillor, I've done much, you know, gone to groups, whatever, that are breastfeeding, and they've all been pretty, you know, pretty satisfied with the support that they're getting. But I do understand that the breastfeeding outside of the home can be a problem. And if this motion is there to address it, then so be it. It's my belief that breastfeeding is every new mother's divine right. To be able to breastfeed their baby, not only does it give an excellent healthy start, it also helps bond mother and baby. Many new mums are unsuccessful at breastfeeding, or they choose not to for many reasons, and that too is their right. The motion proposes the council join Breastfeeding Network and place stickers on windows to welcome breastfeeding mothers. There is actually a similar practice already in place, commissioned by the NHS and the Essex County Council, and it's delivered by Virgin Care and Barnardo's. Over the borough, there are around 45 varied breastfeeding friendly locations listed on their website, which actually includes Basildon Council, Sporting Village, coffee shops, libraries, Towngate Theatre, to name just a few. And they also provide breastfeeding welcome certificates. So that proves that work is already being done to accommodate breastfeeding mothers. I have no doubt that this motion will be agreed, and I thank the councillor for bringing it to council. However, I feel the motion lacks the support element for new mums that need that little bit of extra help. There are support groups out there like Parents First and the NCT, the National Childbirth Trust. They are volunteer organisations that can buddy up to pregnant ladies and new mums and give that vital support to help them on their way to successful breastfeeding. I'm sure a number of the best breastfeeding friendly locations have been out of action because of the pandemic, and much of the volunteer support has been out of action too. However, I would like to suggest that when lockdown eases, we as a council not only join the breastfeeding network, but we invigorate those locations, those other locations, and get to know all the local breastfeeding support groups to be able to signpost our new mums to ensure a rapid increase in breastfeeding numbers. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sargent. Councillor Rimmer, you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Yaqub, for proposing this motion, and Councillor Brown for seconding it. Some excellent speeches from some powerful women, including Councillor Morris and Councillor Sargent. I think it's very fitting that it has accidentally fallen through being postponed, but this motion is so close to International Women's Day that we have just been celebrating. And in fact, it comes at a time in our nation where all of us have to step up and protect and support the women in our lives and the women in our community, especially with the violence that we've seen recently and the treatment of women who were peacefully partaking in a vigil just only days ago. I thought some excellent points were made by Councillor Sargent in terms of the connectivity that could be achieved by linking up with other groups. And there is not much more to say than actually, but I think I speak for many men on this council that we want to be your male allies in actually pushing forward with this very worthwhile agenda of actually supporting new mothers and actually allowing them, educating them about breastfeeding, facilitating their ability to do that in our premises throughout the borough, but also, as Councillor Sargent and Councillor Morris also said, not demonising those who choose not to. So I think it's a very worthwhile motion and I absolutely support it.
Thank you, Councillor Rimmer. Councillor Harrison, you have 5 minutes.
Mr. Mayor, I am finding this difficult. Councillor Yaqub made no mention of the first paragraph in the motion, which referred to formula feeding and the cost to the NHS. I believe that it is every woman's right to choose the best way of feeding their babies. Breastfeeding or formula feeding is a choice for some different reasons. Although I feel like others have said that breastfeeding should always be encouraged. The wording of that first paragraph sends out the wrong signals to many women. It almost infers that formula feeding is something that shouldn't be done. I refer you to, I'll read this, it's from a prominent doctor, one who has become very famous actually, and used to operate in Billericay Hospital. Exclusive breastfeeding is natural, but not always easy. And when there is a glitch, like a delay in the milk supply coming in, inverted nipples, or inadequate milk supply, babies can run into trouble. It's also not always easy for mothers who don't have a lot of support from family and healthcare providers, especially first-time mothers who are feeling overwhelmed. Get sore nipples, who worry that their babies aren't getting enough to eat. Breastfeeding works best when mothers have a knowledgeable and nurturing community to help them work through the inevitable questions and problems, as well as a supportive work environment, but not every mother has this. We need to remember that formula isn't evil. In fact, sometimes it can be a tool to support breastfeeding by supplementing newborns that have lost a risky amount of weight, by supplementing the milk supply of mothers who would otherwise give up entirely, by allowing working mothers who can't pump enough milk for all their hours of work to keep breastfeeding as long as they would like. It's better that babies get some breast milk than none at all. But if we make it an all or none proposition, we may inadvertently cut breastfeeding short. When we demonise formula, we also run the risk of shaming women who, for a number of good reasons, cannot breastfeed. I will now tell you there are many reasons why some women can't breastfeed: medical, physical, and mental reasons. Let me tell you my personal experience. My wife and I have brought up 3 wonderful, healthy children, now adults. I recall witnessing my wife's distress and tears over many occasions, trying desperately to breastfeed our first child for various reasons, and much use of pumps. In the end, it was a fantastic doctor and a sympathetic health worker who said, "Stop. This is not doing you or the baby any good. You can nurture, nourish, and your baby will thrive very well on formula milk, and you should not feel guilty." Also, the linking of formula to breast cancer, etc., will cause mental anguish to those women who cannot breastfeed. The bulk of the motion is excellent, but that first paragraph and one other paragraph, I make it a badly thought out motion, because I would imagine that many schools would not wish to see posters in schools stating breastfeeding is welcome here. I cannot support the motion with those two pieces in it. And that's a lot of that is from personal experience and seeing the issues my wife faced trying to breastfeed children. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. We have one final speaker now, Councillor Smith, and then I'll be inviting Councillor Yacoub to wind up. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep this short and sweet because I don't want to cover over the points other members have made. I'm going to walk where angels may fear to tread from the chap's perspective, yeah? Basildon's full of a lot of gentlemen with old-fashioned views. We might speak like I do, or a little bit posh, but it's fair to say in Basildon, most of the men have these old-fashioned gent-type views. Before the lockdown, if I popped into Basildon, I would always wander into my second office, Greg's, sausage roll, piece of bread pudding, a good Brexiteer, would have a Belgian bun, and just sit on the benches in front of St Martin's Church. And quite often, there'd be a young mum with a baby. And you wouldn't purposely stare or glare, but your eyes would catch and you feel like really horrible because the mother's trying to feed the baby and there's nowhere for mum to go. So she sat out there on a bench trying to feed an hungry baby. Baby can't decide when it's hungry. If the baby's hungry, it's hungry, it needs to be fed. So mum will sit on the bench, feed her baby. And the thing is, I feel really sorry for the lady. She's doing something very intimate in a public place. And she should be supported as much as what she can. If she wants somewhere private to feed the baby, fine. If she don't want men glaring at her, which we don't. But, it must be, I'm just trying to empathise here. But for mum with baby in a public place, you must feel like men are glaring at them when they're not. So I'm very happy to support Councillor Yacoub's motion because I think that intimate space between mum and baby should have the full support of the council and do whatever we can to nurture and support that bond. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Smith, and thank you, members. I'll now invite Councillor Yacoub to wind up. Councillor Yacoub, you have up to 5 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the support on this motion. It means a lot. I'd like to take a step back here, and I'd like to remind you that this motion is about women who have chosen to breastfeed. At no point does this motion indicate that we are demonizing women who have not. As I said in my speech, this is a societal responsibility. This doesn't fall on women alone. But I believe that a debate on this and being able to bring motions like this and experiences of women like this is really important. It is extremely important that we encourage women to make informed decisions for themselves, for whatever suits them, but we support them in doing this. And I'd like to give you a bit of my experience. I've had a screaming baby. I've had tears. I've had nights of pumping. I've had mastitis. I've had bleeding nipples. I know all too well what this means. It wasn't easy for me. And that's why I'm bringing this forward. This is not about bringing women down. As women, we must uplift each other, but that begins from accepting all of our experiences. And sometimes I feel that we have a discomfort here because it's very emotional. It's a very emotional thing for a woman to decide how they choose to feed their baby. And there's a lot that goes on inside. And sometimes things are brought up. And so we're really sensitive and we're really careful about having these conversations. But it is with having these conversations that we will work together in moving forward in this. This is not about demonization of anyone. This is about uplifting women to make those choices, but then to be able to go out in the world and live their normal lives without being made to feel embarrassed or without being made to feel like they are not welcome. I just want to take up the point about Councillor Harrison and what he mentioned about schools. I think when you have a new baby and you're dropping off your child to school, or you have to wait in the reception and your baby's crying because they're hungry, it'd be nice to know that breastfeeding is welcome. It'd be nice to know that you could feed your child without having an added worry. And I think that that's not a very thought out comment that Councillor Harrison has made on this, because it's really important that wherever you can go as a person in any public place, You have the legal right to breastfeed, and this is about making that known for every woman out there, that this is a legal right. There is absolutely nothing wrong with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Yacoub. We'll now put the motion to the vote. So the motion as laid out on page 2 and 3 of your agenda. We'll start with the Conservative group. Are all Conservative members present? They are. Councillor Baggott, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
I do.
And how do you wish to vote?
We vote for.
Thank you, Councillor Baggott. Councillor Callaghan, firstly, are all Labour members present? They are. Councillor Callaghan, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we vote in favour.
You vote in favour. Thank you. Councillor Smith, are all members of the Independent group present? They are. I can see them. Councillor Smith, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
Yes, and we're in favour.
In favour. Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Harrison, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
Just for myself, I abstain.
You abstain. Thank you, Councillor Harrison. And Councillor Brookman, how do you wish to vote?
Yeah, I'm abstaining.
Abstaining as well. Thank you, Councillor Brookman. Councillor Hollyman, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
No, Mr. Mayor, I vote for myself.
And how do you wish to vote, Councillor?
In favour.
In favour, thank you. Councillor Blake, how do you wish to vote?
Having listened to Councillor Harrison, I'll abstain.
Abstain, thank you. Councillor Fellows, how do you wish to vote?
Because I don't believe that women who are unable to breastfeed are not going to be made to feel inferior, be it of their own, mental state. I will be abstaining.
You're abstaining. Thank you, Councillor Fellows. One moment. With 37 votes for and 4 abstentions, the motion has been carried. Councillors, we have a number of speakers on the next agenda item, so we're going to take our break now. If we take 15 minutes back here at 21:25. Thank you. Okay, members, will be recommencing in 1 minute. Okay, members, welcome back, and let's move onwards to agenda item 9, the Community Governance Review 2020 Wickford. I'd just like to point out that in your recommendations on page 34, there was an error in recommendation 1D. It should read in brackets polling districts EA and EB, not EA and EC. So that has been amended to EA and EB, which is the correct reading. I'll now call Councillor Callaghan, Chairman of Policy and Resources, to present the report. Councillor, you have up to 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On behalf of the Policy and Resources Committee, I am presenting to the Council this evening recommendations to formally establish the Wickford Town Council from May 2022. I want to thank all those members of the public who took part in the wider community governance review and made their feelings known to the Council. It is important to ensure that local decisions are being taken at the most local level and that the community has a far greater say in the decision-making process. As councillors, we will be aware that a community governance petition was received by the Council on the 16th of January 2019 from electors within the Wickford area for the creation of a new parish. The electorate for the petition area was 21,354 as of the 1st of December 2018, and the statutory requirement was that the petition must be signed by 7.5% of that total. The number of signatories actually exceeded that threshold. The petition triggered the requirement for the Council to undertake a community governance review to consider the matters set out in the petition. Terms of reference for the review were approved by the former Policy Oversight and Strategy Committee on the 7th of February 2019. The first stage of a community governance review is to invite representations regarding the review from interested persons. And this took place between the 1st of March and 30th of April 2019. At its meeting held on the 13th of November 2019, the Policy and Resources Committee resolved that the specific review be incorporated into a community governance review across the whole borough. The committee also agreed that a Shadow Wickford Town Council be established and subsequently approved membership of the Shadow Council. At its meeting held on the 22nd of July 2020, P&R received the representations and approved detailed proposals associated with the creation of a new parish council in the Wickford area. The consultation was then launched and undertaken in accordance with the approved terms and reference, and this included a letter being sent to all households in the area of the proposed parish and to relevant stakeholders with a link to an online survey which was further promoted through relevant forms of communication. The results of that public consultation are set out for members in enclosure number 3. We also received a further representation from the local Member of Parliament, and that is set out in enclosure 4. In addition, the Bowers Gifford and North Benfleet Parish Council, as well as Ramsden Bell House Parish, responded during the consultation to confirm their support, and we received other representations during that first stage of the consultation. Having had regard to the guidance which is issued by the Secretary of State and the results from the public consultation, the report before members tonight now recommends that the Council makes a community governance reorganisation order as set out in the report. The proposal is to create the parish of Wickford, encompassing the borough wards of Wickford Castledon, Wickford North, excluding that part of Wickford North that is within the parish of Shotgate, and Wickford Park, and there is a map set out for members again in enclosure 1. It is proposed that the area would become the Wickford parish, and given the number of electors within the area, it is considered most appropriate to be named the Wickford Town Council. It is proposed that the first elections to the new town council take place on the same day as ordinary borough council elections in 2022 and every 4 years thereafter. There is a statutory requirement for ordinary elections of the whole council to take place every 4 years, and the guidance states this should be coterminous with the election of borough councillors for that area. Due to the fact that not all 3 borough wards for Wickford elect 3 councillors, the next date when all 3 hold their cyclical elections will be 2022. If the first elections for the new town council had taken place in 2021, the term of office for those elected would only be for 1 year, and there would be limited time between that order being made and elections for prospective candidates to come forward. We also have agreed this with the Shadow Town Council and considered that the ongoing COVID pandemic does not provide the best backdrop for a new town council to be established this May. The Local Government Act 1972, as amended, specifies that each parish council must have at least 5 councillors. There is no maximum number. There are no rules relating to the allocation of those councillors between parish wards, but each parish ward must have at least 1 parish councillor. Taking this into account and comparing with the Billericay Town Council, where the electorate is similar, it is proposed that the number of councillors for Wickford shall be 20. The proposal is to create 3 parish wards, again to be coterminous with the district wards of Wickford Castledon, Wickford North and Wickford Park. It is further proposed that the name and number of councillors for each town and parish ward is as follows. Wickford Castledon with 6 councillors, Wickford North with 7 councillors, and Wickford Park with 7 councillors as well. The Policy and Resources Committee had previously approved the establishment of that shadow Wickford Town Council, which has been operating since early 2020. The report proposes that a formal shadow Wickford Town Council also now be established prior to the first ordinary elections, which, as set out earlier, is proposed to take place in 2022. It is recommended that the authority be delegated to the Director of Strategy and Governance in consultation with me and with local ward members to make all necessary arrangements associated with its establishment. It is considered that a shadow council can be helpful in laying the foundations for a new council. And of course, we are minded to the fact that the shadow council has not been democratically elected and therefore exercise caution in the extent of its activities. To that end, the council will engage in regular liaison meetings with the Shadow Town Council to assist and guide in this regard. And we have made £10,000 available in the budget to support the establishment of the Wickford Town Council. As referred to earlier, the community governance review being undertaken includes other unparished areas of the borough aside from Wickford, although we think at this moment in time, it is better to bring those proposals back to P&R later in the year. Mr. Mayor, of course, creating a town council doesn't come cheap. The cost of any layer of government has to be borne by someone, and in this instance, that cost will be borne by the residents of Wickford, who will be asked to see their council tax bills increase. Now, I know my colleagues in the opposition are comfortable with raising council tax, just as their police commissioner and county council colleagues have done this year, but from the Labour group's perspective, raising council tax can be regressive. We also believe in the mantra of no taxation without representation. And given that we do not have any councillors from the elected Wickford wards, it would not be right for us to pass judgment on this one way or the other tonight. If councillors who represent the area believe that increasing council tax in Wickford is a price worth paying for the town council, I respect that decision. The council has listened, Mr. Mayor, to the people of Wickford on both sides, and we understand that rushing into this would have been a mistake. The deliberative approach that the council has taken has helped to shape the town council, get it on its feet, shape opinion, and allow them to be in full control of setting the precept for the 2022-23 financial year. Whatever happens this evening with this vote, I wish the people involved every success. I look forward to working with them, and I commend this report to council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Callaghan. I've had 6 people indicate that they would like to speak on this. Councillor Sargent, Harrison, Buckley, Brockman, Baggott and Hollyman. If there's any others who wish to speak, please indicate. We'll start with Councillor Sargent. You have 5 minutes, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I must say, I am happy this evening that finally, after a couple of years, the Wickford Town Council, as they want to call themselves, will finally be established and can become a town council next year. It just grieves me slightly that they have a year of being a shadow council. I know they will use that time wisely to look into how to properly conduct themselves and deliver services and be a good group or good parish council for that area. But it's just that it has taken so long for them to get to this stage. And as I have said before, when I have commented on this, it's very difficult for the whole community of residents because they have been petitioned, they have been consulted, and they have given their response. And why should it take so long? Well, it appears that Councillor Callaghan has had a change of view because he didn't seem so very keen in the first instances. And I think this is why it has taken so long to finally get them there. But it's unfortunate that they're not established from May and that it has to be. And I understand the reasons, but if they'd have been established before, maybe it wouldn't. And as for the COVID, all us parish councils have been working extremely well, delivering services and functioning as this council is, absolutely in spite of the pandemic. In actual fact, we've been we've been doing more. I'd like to know why Note Bridge was left out of the mentions of parishes that did respond, unless I've got the wrong consultation, because I know that Note Bridge Parish Council, we did send in quite a detailed response because it was published in your reports, where we gave our real support to Wickford, and we also gave our views on the community governance review that was taking place. And that is absolutely vital that we make those views and that the council listens to them, because there are times when you don't. I can remember when I chaired the steering group setting up Note Bridge. At that time, it was the Secretary of State that made the decision. This time, and it took 2 years because it was the Secretary of State, which you understand, but this time it's been devolved to the council, to the borough council, and it's still taken as long. I think that's pretty shameful. I've met a couple of the group at one of the parish liaison groups, and they seem absolutely keen, ready, and I wish them every success. I'm so pleased to be able to, agree this evening, and I am really pleased that they are going to have finally become established as a council and serve their area and do as much as what we are doing over at Note Bridge. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sargent. I'll now hand over to Councillor Harrison. Councillor Harrison, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Many years ago, I opposed the formation of Shopgate Parish Council. One simple reason. I believe then there should have been a Wickford Town Council. But various people, I think one might even be present here tonight, was opposed to a town council at that particular time. But so instead, we went to a Shopgate Parish Council. And perhaps it is unfortunate that Shopgate now is on its own, but that has some benefits. But it could have been involved in the whole of Wickford. I think that a Wickford Town Council will be good for Wickford. I think that people, and Councillor Sargent will, I know from a parish council point of view, share my view that there are still very limited powers of a town or parish council. Sometimes we wish there were more, but there aren't. But parish councils and town councils can take over responsibilities from borough councillors. But all the time, as Councillor Sargent will know full well, we have to consider the total precept applying to our areas, which I think is important. And you have to take people with you. Wickford will be difficult, as is Billericay, because Billericay is split with Little Bursted, South Green, and the Billericay Town Council. So that is not a complete entity either. I think that, and I speak from experience of Shopgate, first of all, you join up and you're elected as a parish councillor and you have these great ideas of the things you want to do. But some of those things never happen. And some of those things have taken 10 years to come to some conclusion as you get people around you to work together. I think it's a difficult task. Whoever takes it on has a difficult job. But while I'm a borough councillor, I will do all I can to assist them. But one thing that comes out, the parish councils must not be in competition with the borough council. It's about working together. It's about working together. I think that's proved it can be done. Billericay Town Council, I think now we work together pretty good with the borough council. I think Noakbridge does. I think the other ones do. I think Bowers Gifford, etc. I think it can happen. But I hope that Wickford Town Council, the Shadow Town Council, in the first year when they're shadowing, can get some good ideas forward, work with the borough, and work with the ward members. It mustn't be them or us. That could be the worst thing possible. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Buckley, you have 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Number of things. There's been the working group. Sorry, can you hear me, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, we can hear you, Councillor Buckley. Yes, we can.
On the screen and said I couldn't mute myself.
No.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I'll start again. For some considerable time, there has been a group of people that have led the campaign for a town council for Wickford. And I think to understand why, I think you have to look back many years, probably a couple of decades or more. And I first got involved in politics over a boundary review back in the 1980s. And at that time, there was a strong wish for Wickford to break away from Basildon. The reason for that was very simple. People perceived a lot more money being spent in Basildon rather than in Wickford or Billericay. And from a council point of view, it was not. What was happening was the Commission for New Towns and its predecessor, the Development Corporation, was investing a lot of money in Basildon, which wasn't coming north of the 127. So there was an imbalance of investment, but not through the fault of the council, I would hasten to add. But I think it now has led us to a situation where people say to themselves, well, yeah, we would like to have a bit more control, a bit more influence. And I think that's a perfectly reasonable aspiration. I am concerned, though, about a couple of points. First of all, in terms of the proposed number of councillors for the town council, 20 members, and also the breakdown of them. And for example, Wickford Castledon, 6 councillors, Wickford North, 7 councillors. Wickford North is substantially larger, even without Shopgate, than Wickford Castledon. So I think the balance of numbers probably is not correct and may need to be revisited at some point. The other concern I have is around elections, I do believe that all elections should be contested. And too many parish councils across the country, and indeed some in the borough, do appoint members or do co-opt members rather than have more candidates come forward than there are vacant seats on that council. That is something, if that happens continually, we will not be getting a proper representation from the town council. So I think it is important, and Councillor Callaghan mentioned a sum of 10,000 being put to one side to support the work this year. Some of that money needs to be focused on attracting candidates to that election. If we don't get at least double the number of candidates for the number of seats, then it's not really going to be a representative election. So I think that is something we need to be very concerned about. I'm also concerned that although the petition clearly got over the threshold comfortably for the creation of the town council, if you actually look at, I think it was Appendix 2, where it gives the numbers of respondents to the letters that were sent out, only 872 people responded. And I think that's a disappointingly low number. And I think that does reflect on the fact that this council, by being overly dependent on the internet for responses to not just this consultation, but others as well, it is not actually reaching enough people to get a firm opinion. I don't doubt that the result would not have changed, but the participation is far, far lower than I would have expected or wished to see. In terms of what's to be done by the local council, I know that, having met with some of the members, that they do have some ideas, many of which are very good. But I think what they do have to be focused on is what Councillor Callaghan said at the start, and that's the amount of tax they take out of local people's pockets. And obviously Conservatives did propose a reduction in Basildon's council tax early, at the budget meeting a few weeks ago. But nevertheless, this will be money coming out of residents' pockets. They have got to demonstrate that whatever they take, they are giving added value. And I do appreciate that tax is not their only source of income, but what we do need to see for Wickford is every pound they take out of our pockets, we need to see more than that returned in terms of values of services. And running and setting up a town or parish council is expensive. And one only has to look at some of the others, the costs of clerks, the costs of offices. With a town council this size, it need some form of...
30 seconds, Councillor Buckley, 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just winding up anyway. What I don't want to see, and it does happen on a number of other parish councils around, is the Jackie Weaver scenario. Of the people I've met that are involved with this, they do seem to be sensible, I'm pleased to say. That's not the case with every parish council in the county, and I can see Councillor Harrison smiling because he knows what I'm referring to. So, like Councillor Harrison, I will of course work with the new town council as soon as it's established, both at county and at borough level. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillor Baggott, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Of course, I welcome this report, and having sat on the Policy and Resources Committee right from the inception of this, it's really good to see now, after the period of time it's taken, for the people of Wickford to have got what it is they wanted when they first handed to me a petition stating that they wish to form a town council. Councillor Callaghan refers to their deliberative approach as if that's something brilliant in the way to do it. But of course, every time this year when we have countenanced taking a deliberative approach with their ambitious projects, with their ill thought out schemes, we've been told that it's kicking things into the long grass, that it's just a way of delaying things. And in fact, that's exactly what their deliberative approach was here. They put roadblocks in place for the good people of Wickford to get this town council formed, time and time again, much to the frustration of the people involved. And I'm sure that they're all breathing a great sigh of relief now that they've reached the final hurdle. And I congratulate them on that. Because while I take on board the comments that have been said about taxation, politics really at local government should be about the people. And the more people that are involved and able to represent those people, in my view, the better. What happens too many times, and what has been obvious in the year of this administration, is a complete disregard of listening to the public, a complete failure in actually engaging with that public and being in tune with what they want and the things that they actually have as aspirations for. So any council which brings democracy closer to that public is something to be applauded. And I thank the people of Wickford for their perseverance. I look forward to the formation of the Wickford Town Council. And I look forward, because I think Councillor Harrison made a very good point. I think that it should be collaboration when we have town councils and parish councils. And I look forward to an era when Basildon Borough Council has that relationship with Wickford. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Councillor Baggott. Councillor Brockman, you have 5 minutes. Oh, Councillor Brockman doesn't wish to speak. Therefore, we're on to our final speaker, Councillor Holliman. Councillor Holliman, you've 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to admit this particular topic has caused me many sleepless nights since I first heard about it. Bit of history. I moved to Wickford in 1974. At that time, I was living in a village approximately half the size of Wickford called Larkfield, which is on the outskirts of Maidstone. I could have relocated to anywhere in the country, but after visiting many other places for over 3 months, I suppose, I chose Wickford for 3 main reasons. Firstly, it had its own train station with a direct, relatively short journey time straight into the centre of London. Secondly, it sort of reminded me a lot of where I had been living in Larkfield, which was a very peaceful, open, rural area with some great local pubs, plus easy shopping. Lastly, it had what I called then potential. I was unaware at that time that my interpretation of the word potential would become completely different to that of the council or of the future property developers that were going to get involved. You got to Wickford at that time coming from London by turning off the A127 and following a small country road which had mainly fields on both sides, plus 1 or 2 cottages dotted around. Eventually, you arrived at a crossroads called Hall's Corner. Everything around you had a feeling of space, its own time, and a positive energy. If someone had said to me at that time, in 40 years from now, the people of this town will be doing everything in their power to save one very small scrap of open land, which will be known as Wick Green, I would have thought they had probably spent too long in one of their great local pubs. In 1970, an American singer called Joni Mitchell wrote a song called Big Yellow Taxi. The lyrics included the lines, "They took all the trees and put them in a tree museum. Then they paved paradise and put up a parking lot." Perhaps she knew something back then on the way Wickford was heading. So now we're looking at a town council, and for some reason...
I'm glad we've got back to that, Councillor Holliman. You've been entertaining me immensely, but if we can stick to the town council moving forward, it'd be much appreciated. Thank you.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the guidance. For some reason, when I think of a town council, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland come to mind. We are now supposed to address these regions of Great Britain as countries as a result of devolution. Comparing the before and after, Has devolution really made that much difference to any of these countries, apart from making them more hostile towards England? Are they now operating totally independent, defining their own futures, or are they simply working within the defined parameters in which they are being allowed to operate in? So can we draw any parallels between these now devolved countries and the proposed inauguration of a Wickford Town Council? If in, say, 2 years from now, Basildon Council wanted to reproduce a replica of the multi-storey skyscrapers they are proposing for their own town centre, but now for Wickford, would the newly formed town council be able to stop them? In fact, if any major substantial changes were to be imposed on Wickford by council or government at any point in the future, how could we amend this through a town council to stop it happening? Because of these concerns and many more unanswered questions, I'm afraid on this occasion, I will have to abstain. However, that is not to say that I may change my mind in the future if I can see any positive advantages for all the people of Wickford in taking this course of action. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And thank you, Councillor Hollyman. We've come to the end of our speakers. Therefore, I will now invite Councillor Callaghan to wind up. Councillor, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. And it's actually a pleasure to follow Councillor Hollyman there, because I think the question that he asked about devolution, I think, is a very pertinent one. And I think the question about what is it that you actually want to be able to do in a new layer of governance, I think is a question that perhaps hasn't been answered fully. Not just, by the way, when it comes to parishes and towns, but also more broadly, the local government reorganisation that is coming down the tracks to abolish county councils and to create larger unitary ones. And I think much of 2021, there will be a debate about devolution and what powers people want. I also think it's incredibly important that several members tonight, with far more experience of Wickford than I have in terms of years living there, I did 16, but collectively, I think there's probably over 100 years of people living in Wickford on the contributions from members tonight. I think it's extraordinary that what we are describing is a story of failure. What we are describing is a management of decline, and that actually the proposal tonight to create something, the powers, the levers of powers to change the things that people on this call, on this meeting have suggested that they want to change, cannot be changed by a town council. So I think that is something we need to keep very much in our mind, that regeneration, growth, vision, all of those things will remain the remit of the borough council, irrespective of whether or not a town council is formed tonight. They will be statutory consultees. They will not be decision makers on regeneration, as outlined by Councillor Hollyman. Councillor Bagger made a confusing pitch. He wants more councillors, he wants more democracy, but he's utterly opposed, and has been for 2 years, to a community governance review. It is an odd strategy if you want to create more democracy, but you oppose the question being asked of people when it comes to how do you do it. The deliberative approach that the council has taken has been one that has allowed the town council to form their own precept. One of the lessons that we learned from the Billericay Town Council was that when Basildon Borough Council set the precept out of the gate, it set it too low. And that every year thereafter, Billericay Town Council has had to play catch up when it comes to the precept. What we have done by doing the deliberative approach that we've gone down in consultation with the Shadow Town Council is we've given them the power to set the first precept. So this is not, as we often hear from the opposition, kick it into the long grass with absolutely no ideas, absolutely no questions about what they're going to do next. We've asked questions and we've given them the power to set that precept. Councillor Buckley, I thought was making an articulate case against a town council from his contribution, I have to say, when he talked about added value, return on investment. And again, I think this comes back to understanding the powers that a town council, any town council can have, what they are going to use them for, and how much money it is going to cost. And over the next 12 months, those questions will need to be answered. And I think he sets a fair challenge that if we can't get 40 candidates to come forward to contest these elections, then should we be levying high levels of additional tax onto every household in Wickford? And I think that that is something for Wickford members to understand. Councillor Harrison's absolutely right. Working together is the key. We do that successfully with the local councils liaison group. We've done that successfully, as we've already debated tonight, with Bowers Gifford when it comes to neighbourhood plans. We're doing that with other parts of the borough as well. And that question of why now, I think is key for members to deliberate on. Councillor Sargent talked about the 2-year approach, and as I think I've outlined here, rushing to taxation without being able to answer some of those questions, I think would have been a mistake. And we're pleased to get to a point where actually the answers to those questions can be made before tax is levied on people. I also thank her for her words about how well this administration has done during COVID and how well the council has done. I think that is warmly welcomed. And finally, she said that she was happy. So if I do nothing else in my 9 years as a councillor, Mr. Mayor, I have made Councillor Sargent happy tonight, so I can leave in peace. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Callaghan. And on that note, we'll move to the vote. If all members could please turn on their cameras. Can we confirm that all members of the Conservative group are present? If they can turn the cameras on too, that would be great. Councillor Turner, if you could turn your camera on, please. Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Baggott, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
I do.
And how do you wish to vote?
For.
And do any members of the Conservative group wish to vote differently? Please raise your hand. Thank you. All members of the Labour group, can you make sure your cameras are on, please? Just waiting for Councillor Adeniran and Councillor Brown. Turn your cameras on, please.
And Councillor Dadds is having some problems.
We need Councillor Adeniran and Councillor Brown to turn their cameras on, please.
Apologies, I'm having issues turning on my camera. Sorry.
One moment. He's here. We've got him. Brilliant. Good. And Councillor Brown? Okay, we'll just take one moment while we try and contact Councillor Brown, and then we'll have to move to the vote without her present. One moment, please. I need to unmute. We can't contact Councillor Brown. I'm not sure if her connection's still there. So we're going to move to the vote without Councillor Brown present. Councillor Callaghan, do you wish to vote on behalf of the Labour group?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
And how do you wish to vote?
Abstain.
Abstain. Do any members of the Labour group wish to vote differently? No. Thank you. Councillor Smith, if we can just confirm all members of the Independent group are present and have cameras on. Good. Councillor Smith, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group? We're just unmuting you now.
Abstain.
Abstain. And do any members of the independent group wish to vote differently? No. Okay. Councillor Harrison, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
No, I'll vote for myself. I'm in favour.
You're in favour. Thank you, Councillor Harrison. And Councillor Brockman, how do you wish to vote?
Yeah, I'm in favour.
In favour, thank you. Councillor Hollyman, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
No, just myself, Mayor.
And how do you wish to vote?
Abstain.
Abstain, thank you, Councillor Hollyman. Councillor Blake, how do you wish to vote?
I'll support my leader and abstain.
Abstain, thank you. And Councillor Fellows, how do you wish to vote?
Abstain, Mr. Mayor.
Abstain, one moment, please. Thank you. With 20 votes for, 20 abstentions and 1 member not present, the vote is carried. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to agenda item 10, adoption of the Statement of Community Involvement. I'm now going to call Councillor Ferguson, Chairman of Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee, to present the report. Councillor Ferguson, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Chair of Strategic Planning Infrastructure, it's my privilege tonight to present the Statement of Community Involvement for the South Essex Plan. In preparation for any South Essex Plan, we have worked with other South Essex local authorities to produce the Statement of Community Involvement. This went out to consultation over a 6-week period, of which there were 88 responses, and the summary of those is in the report pack this evening. This has been approved by the Strategic Planning Infrastructure Committee at our meeting in January, and I'm now recommending to full council for approval and adoption. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. I currently have 1 member who's indicated to speak on this, which is Councillor Moore. If anyone else wishes to speak, please indicate. And we'll now move to Councillor Moore. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Surveys, as this council is aware, are a quick and relatively easy means of gathering data from large numbers of people or organisations across wide areas. They are an efficient method because computers can analyse answers and quantify the data very quickly. Response rates to surveys do, of course, provide valuable insights into the accuracy of the collected data. A response rate refers to the number of people who completed the survey divided by the number of people who make up the total sample group. Of course, the timing of the consultation can influence response rates to a consultation. In this case, the consultation was carried out over the Christmas and New Year period in 2019. This would probably influence the total number of respondents to any survey. After all, who could be bothered to complete a survey over the Christmas and New Year period? It is generally accepted by social scientists and market researchers that a good survey response rate is one that is around the 25% mark. For example, in the previous report, Councillor Buckley mentioned a response rate of 872 respondents from a total population of 30,909. The response rate there was 2.8%, and he thought that was bad. In this case, Mr. Mayor, we have a total population in South Essex of just under 1 million, in fact, around 919,665. And we received responses from just 48 individuals or organisations, making a total response rate of 0.0005%. significantly below the recognised ideal rate of 25%. By any survey standards, this response rate would almost be irrelevant. However, let us look at the responses in more detail. We had 25 individual residents who responded, 2 councils, Malden and Chelmsford, 3 residents' organisations, 4 companies that included 2 land development companies, Southend Airport and ICL in Thurrock, and 14 statutory consultees. Hardly a robust endorsement, Mr. Mayor, of the SCI addendum for the South Essex Plan. Members may recall that some years ago we had over 1,000 responses with over 21,000 comments to the public consultation on the Basildon draft local plan, and that was obviously just to Basildon. You can understand, Mr. Mayor, that unfortunately there is hardly a, quote, general interest in the South Essex plan as stated on page 109 of the report. For these reasons, Mr. Mayor, we cannot support the recommendation on page 108. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. I have no other speakers who have indicated to speak. Therefore, I'm going to call Councillor Ferguson to wind up. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And in response to the comments made by Councillor Moore, he made similar comments when this came forward to the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee in January. The consultation response was in line with other similar consultation responses that we've had around statements of community involvements. And let's reflect on the issue that the people have been consulted on. It's a consultation about future consultations, hence the number of responses that we've received here. Any vote against this proposal this evening is a vote against having a statement of community involvement. I passionately believe that we should have one. I think that we should respond to our residents and set out the terms of how we will consult with them going forward. So I hope that all members will support this evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. We'll now move to the vote. We're voting on the recommendation as set out on page 108 of your agenda. If all members could please turn on their cameras. Can we confirm that all members of the Conservative group are present? We're just awaiting Councillor Turner. Councillor Turner could turn on his camera, please. Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Baggott, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
I do.
And how do you wish to vote?
We vote against.
You vote against. And do any member of the Conservative group wish to vote differently? Thank you. Are all members of the Labour group present? We're still struggling to get Councillor Brown. We'll just give her one moment while we continue to attempt to get hold of her. Councillor Callaghan, would you like to move forward on the vote without Councillor Brown present? Yes, okay. Councillor Callaghan, do you wish to vote on behalf of the Labour group? And how do you wish to vote? Say that again, sorry, Councillor.
Favour.
In favour. And do any members of the Labour group wish to vote differently? No? Okay. Councillor Smith, can we just firstly confirm all your group are present? Yes, they are. Councillor Smith, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
Yes, and we're in favour.
You're in favour. Thank you, Councillor Smith. Any members of the independent group wish to vote differently? No? Okay, Councillor Harrison, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
I vote on behalf of myself, in favour.
In favour, thank you. And Councillor Brockman, how do you wish to vote?
In favour.
In favour, thank you, Councillor Brockman. Councillor Hollyman, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
No, just myself.
And how do you wish to vote?
In favour.
Thank you, Councillor Hollyman. Councillor Blake, how do you wish to vote?
In favour.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. And Councillor Fellows, how do you wish to vote?
In favour.
In favour. One moment, please. With 22 votes for and 18 votes against, the recommendation has been carried. Okay, we'll now move on to agenda item 11, which is the subsidiary company group structure. I'll now call on Councillor Callaghan, Chairman of the Policy Resources Committee, to present the report. You have 10 minutes, Councillor.
Mr. Mayor, the report before Council this evening is a technical report that has received the unanimous support of the Policy and Resources Committee. As members will know, the Council operates two commercial companies, Sempre Housing and Acorn House. And this report brings the Council's commercial activities together into a formal company group structure to protect the Council from financial losses. This is a standard practice and will further secure the Council's revenue streams as we look to bridge the deficit left to us by the Conservative government in Westminster. Given the announcements by the Chancellor of the Exchequer in the budget to raise corporation tax to a crippling 25% by 2023, which will devastate businesses and is taxing aspiration of companies like Sempre Housing, we are needing to take this step tonight to protect the Council's revenue. Mr. Mayor, the report is self-explanatory and I commend it to Council.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. I've had one member who's indicated they would like to speak on this report, and that is Councillor Hillier. Do you still wish to speak, Councillor?
Unmute. Hold on, here we go.
There we are.
Right, yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do wish to comment.
Okay, you have 5 minutes, Councillor.
Yeah, I probably won't take all that time, Mr. Mayor, but just to say, generally speaking, I'm in favour of this particular report. Where my concerns are is the sorts of projects that this administration might bring forward and put forward. And that is my concern. And if you'll grant me a little bit of latitude, Mr. Mayor, because this is the last opportunity I'm going to have to address this council, just to say that 6 times in the last 21 years, the residents of Langdon Hills have voted for me to represent them on this council, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank them for that. And I would also like to wish all my friends and colleagues who are going to step up to the plate on May the 6th, because I would prefer that there's a Conservative administration to oversee.
Okay, Councillor Hillier, I was allowing you a little bit of latitude.
I'm bringing it back now. I'm bringing it back now, Mr. Mayor.
I'm not having, one moment I'm speaking, I am not having a party political broadcast, so please continue speaking to the report that's in front of you.
Well, yes, I mean, all I was going to say is that I would prefer a different administration to be running this particular project. And the real concern I have here is the recommendations 5 and 6, which come here and say that it'll be the Policy and Resources Committee that receives or will deal with the terms of reference and will deal with the Articles of Association. Now, obviously, there will have to be some organisation that will, or part of this organisation that will take those decisions. But I think with the proximity to the elections, then to name the committee, which may not exist after May, perhaps is a little bit incautious in the drafting of this. So, you know, if I were in a position to redraft this, I'd say the committee, Policy and Resources Committee, or any successor body that takes those responsibilities. But we're not. And as I say, I think, Mr. Mayor, that's really all I have to say, except that, I have had an enjoyable time on this council for the most part. I have to admit, the last couple of years have been slightly less enjoyable than other parts of it. But thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your help and your let's say your good nature. And I will sign off and say thank you very much, and thank you all members who have been with me on this council for the last 21 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hillier. Councillor Baggott, you've indicated to me that you would wish to speak. Councillor Baggott.
No, I don't want to speak at all. No, sorry. Don't know why you think that, but
I thought you wished to move an amendment, Councillor. No? Okay. In that case, the debate is now done and we'll move to Councillor Callaghan to wind up. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Mayor. And it's good to hear from our friend in Dorset and his views on this report tonight. What I would say is that if the Conservatives had been running the commercial activities of the council over the last 12 months, we would have lost £3 million and we would have had to have cut almost every frontline discretionary service in the budget. And that much is clear. Voting against some of the most ambitious and best commercial deals available on the market in local government has not been a particularly wise move, I would suggest. But that is not the purpose of this report. And if we do speak to this report, then this is about making sure that the council is protecting all of its liabilities and that it is as efficient as possible so that we can use every penny raised from Semper and Acorn House to go back into plugging the council's deficit. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I put it to the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. And if I could ask all members to please turn on their cameras for the vote. We're voting on recommendations on page 168 of your agenda, recommendations 1 to 6. If we can just confirm that all members of the Conservative group are present. We're just awaiting Councillor Turner. Councillor Turner, you do like to keep us waiting. Councillor Baggott, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
I do.
And how do you wish to vote?
For.
For. And do any members of the Conservative group wish to vote differently? No? Okay. If all members of the Labour group could please turn their cameras on, please. I'm just waiting for Councillor Adeniran and we're still unfortunately unable to contact Councillor Brown. Councillor Adeniran, if you could turn your camera on, please. Councillor Adeniran, can you turn your camera on, please? Okay, we'll just wait for 1 minute as we have with previous members while we try and get Councillor Adeniran back onto the meeting. 1 moment. Councillor Adeniran, there he is. Councillor Callaghan, do you wish to vote? Do you wish to proceed firstly without Councillor Brown present?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
And how do you wish to vote? Do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
And how do you wish to vote?
In favour.
In favour. And do any members of the Labour group wish to vote differently? No, thank you. Are all the independents present? They are. Councillor Smith, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
I'll answer both questions now. Yes, and in favour.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. And Councillor, do any members of your group wish to vote differently? No. Councillor Holliman, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
No, just myself, Mayor, and in favour.
In favour. And Councillor Blake, how do you wish to vote?
In favour.
I did skip over Councillor Harrison. Councillor Harrison, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
Yes, and in favour.
And Councillor Brockman, do you wish to vote differently? No. Councillor Fellows, how do you wish to vote?
In favour, Mr. Mayor.
In favour. Thank you. 1 moment. With 40 votes for, it's unanimous and the recommendations are carried. Okay, members, we now move on to agenda item number 12, establishment of a Basden Borough Youth Mayor. I call Councillor Gavin Callaghan, Chairman of Policy and Resources, to present the report. Councillor, you have up to 10 minutes.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to formally move the report, and I'm going to hand over to you to talk through the details, as you've done so much work on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and I will just take a few moments before inviting speakers just to highlight some details on this. So I'm absolutely delighted to have been working on bringing this proposal forward, that we establish a youth mayor for the Basden Borough. Our young people deserve a greater voice. They really are our future, and we can learn just as much from them as they can learn from us. As we seek to increase civic pride in our borough and create greater opportunities for young people, the introduction of a youth mayor was an important next step. As part of the process, I engaged personally with the Basden Youth Council, and they told me how important this role would be to young people as they act as a role model for them. It's important that the role holder follows an agenda set by them and their peers as they raise awareness of young people's issues whilst representing them at various civic events throughout the year. They'll have their own nominated charity and will carry out charitable fundraising activities too. Of course, the role will also involve them supporting the mayor as appropriate. Basden Youth Council is open to all young people in the borough between the ages of 11 and 19 and is an independent, non-political organisation. The Youth Council appoints a chair and a vice chair through a nomination process every year in early May. It's proposed that these individuals become the youth mayor and the deputy youth mayor respectively and serve a one-year term. The role will be fully supported by Democratic Services in consultation with the young person's parents or guardian. I would strongly encourage all members to support the creation of these new roles this evening, and I'd like to thank all officers who've worked with me bringing this report and these new roles forward. I think it's going to be a real positive change to our borough to have a youth mayor and a deputy youth mayor in place. I have two people who have indicated to speak, and I'll firstly move to Councillor Dadds. Councillor Dadds, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. May I have some latitude in joining you before I speak to the substantive point in thanking Councillor Andrew Gordon and Councillor Hillier for their service. I think they've done, it's a hard task, whichever party you are representing, to represent your party. And I think Andrew's done a cracking job on supporting mental health. And I wish him and thank him for his service and wish him all the best. And same for Hillier. Him and his wife have dedicated many years of service. And I think we have to take that moment to say thank you. And I wish them all well. Obviously, I wish Gavin Callaghan a good retirement because he won't be re-elected. But obviously,
Councillor Dadds, you were doing so well then.
I know
you were doing so well.
A bit of latitude. But now, I want to thank him because this will be the last opportunity that I will thank him before he retires.
Now stick to the report, otherwise we'll move on.
Okay, no, I'd like to now come to the substantive. I think youth civic pride is really important, and you and I have shared the role of mayor, and I think it's really great to see the youth council, and they play a very, very key part in informing us as well as us informing them and sharing those ideas. It is something that we should support, no different to the twinning, for example, and how the youth get involved in the twinning. We've got the youth council. All these things are really great for our borough. It's a shame that Councillor Smith cut the budget for the twinning this week, but I'm hoping a Conservative administration will amend that wrong when we take control, because I think it is important that we support the youth and that we I'm certainly in support of a youth mayor. So I wish good luck to all those Conservative councillors, and I wish all those retiring Labour councillors all the best.
Thank you, Councillor Dadds. Now, I think you, as an ex-mayor, as I keep saying to you, understand how to keep to the subject that we're debating, because you were apparently really good at this when you were mayor a couple of years ago. So please give me the respect of keeping to the debate this evening. Thank you. Councillor Gordon, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm really pleased to see this report come forward. I think it's absolutely fantastic that we have a youth mayor for Basildon. I joined this council, I think it was 18 years old, not 19 years old, and it hasn't aged me very well, as you can tell. I've sort of left it a bit dishevelled, but it raises a valid point that we all as councillors need to think about what more we can do to engage young people in political decision making, and what we can do to give young people who are our future a voice. It's very, very difficult for young people to get involved in politics and have a say over their future because of the systems that are at play, you know, bits and bobs like that. Being exposed to the public is quite challenging as well. So by creating this role of youth mayor, we're giving young people a bit of an opportunity to really sort of start that process. I will ask for your indulgence, Mr. Mayor, just very briefly, because I would like to thank every single member of this council for their support over the years, the fantastic work that every member of this council has done on raising awareness for mental health. I think it's been absolutely inspirational and a real pleasure. I wish all the best to Councillor Hillier. We haven't always agreed, but we get on with it at the end of the day, and I wish him all the best for his future. But I really do want to put on record my thanks to everyone, and I am absolutely over the moon that we're going to get hopefully a youth mayor for this town. Thank you.
Brilliant, and thank you again, Councillor Gordon. Councillor Sargent, over to you. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too am very pleased. I can remember some years ago attending a conference with Councillor Mike Moe, or former Councillor Mike Moe, when he was on the council. We went to London in Local Democracy Week to a conference, and obviously it was all about democracy, and I was so jealous of Southend because they not only did they have a cabinet, a shadow cabinet, but they also had a youth mayor, and they were absolutely fantastic. And I always wanted to see the day when we too at Basildon could have one. And you know, this evening it's I'm sure everybody's going to support this. It's finally come true, and so I'm really pleased about that. There's just one thing that I feel could be missing, Mr. Mayor, and I'd just like to ask: are they going to have a budget? Because I remember we did a lot of democracy weeks when I used to be a cabinet member, and things like that came up because I know that you're spending money on the chain of office, etc., which is necessary, but it would be good if we could give them a small budget, because that would make the role a bit more meaningful if they were to deliver something or another. I mean, if you would, you know, if that could be borne in mind. But that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sargent. And then finally, I'll come to Councillor Smith before asking Councillor Callaghan to wind up. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's not a lot to say, really. I mean, I'm glad Terry Sargent spoke before me. She made a lot of sense. An opposition member, she played absolutely right. She made a point, but still supporting something positive. It's just a shame a certain individual has just acted more childish and say something you'd expect from a sixth form. I won't say any names because we'll have more points of order than a bar at lunchtime with fresh orders. I think it's a fantastic thing. when you look at how few young people actually vote, it's atrocious. Other countries, they do a lot of programs to get young people involved in the democratic process. I think if any of us stood outside of school and said, what are the functions of the county and the borough council? And they'd probably just look at you as if you was mad. So anything that engages young people with the governance process, I think is a wonderful thing. So I'm going to, say no more. This is supposed to be a neutral, apolitical post. And I expect to see that when this new youth mayor is installed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. And on that note, I'll call Councillor Callaghan to wind up. You have 5 minutes, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank members for their contributions this evening. I think there is a pattern that is clear for everybody to see. The opposition are in favour of youth services, but they couldn't deliver them, and it was up to this administration to come in and to deliver the youth zone. They were in favour of a youth mayor, they didn't deliver it, so it's up to this administration to come in and to deliver it. And it is for that reason that when it comes to May the 6th, and when it comes to those results, we're just getting started, Mr. Mayor. I commend this report.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Councillor Rimmer's waving at me for some reason, with two hands now. Anyway, let's move on. So we shall now move to the vote. We are voting on the recommendations on page 179 of the report, recommendations 1 and 2. If every member could turn their camera on, please. Okay, can we confirm all Conservative members are present? We have 3 without cameras on. Still waiting for Councillor Jeffrey and Councillor Turner. Thank you, Councillor Turner. And now Councillor Headley's turned his camera off. Thank you. Councillor Baggott, do you wish to vote on behalf of the Conservative group?
I do.
And how do you wish to vote?
We vote for.
You vote for. Thank you, Councillor Baggott. Do any members of the Conservative group wish to vote differently? No. If all members of the Labour group could now turn their cameras on, please. I'm just waiting for Councillor Adeniran because Councillor Brown is still unfortunately not present. Councillor Adeniran, if you could turn your camera on, please.
I know he's got a difficult job, Mr. Mayor. He's a real lawyer.
Okay, just one moment. Councillor Adeniran, if you could turn your camera on, please. We'll give you 30 seconds.
LLP.
Okay. Are we able to get in touch with Councillor Adeniran?
I know he was having problems with his camera. Are we able to call the other votes and see if we can get hold of him?
I've just asked him to turn his camera on now using there we go. Okay. Councillor Callaghan, do you wish to vote on behalf of the Labour group?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we're in favour.
In favour, do any Labour members wish to vote differently? No. Okay, we now move to the independent group. Are all members present? Yes, they are. Councillor Smith, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
For and in favour.
Excellent. And do any members of the independent group wish to vote differently? No. Councillor Harrison, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
Myself, in favour.
In favour. And Councillor Brockman, how do you wish to vote?
Absolutely, yes. What a brilliant idea.
In favour, thank you. Councillor Hollyman, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
Just me, Mayor, and it's in favour.
Thank you, Councillor Hollyman. Councillor Blake, how do you wish to vote?
In favour.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. And Councillor Fellows, how do you wish to vote?
Very much in favour, Mr. Mayor.
In favour, lovely, thank you. That's 40 votes for, it's unanimous, and the recommendations on page 179 have been carried. Thank you, members. We now move to notice of motions, and just to inform you that Councillor Callaghan has informed me that he wishes to withdraw motion B. He's withdrawing motion B. So we start with motion A. I'd now like to call Councillor Buckley to present the motion. Councillor, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think I'll need 10 minutes to introduce this particular motion, because I think it's one that, despite our political differences, should actually really receive unanimous support. I'm seeking a peer review with a particular focus on regeneration and planning. And I think it is important for members to know what that's about. It is not about whether you do or do not grant planning permission for any particular scheme. That's completely outside the scope of a peer review. In my time on the council, I think Basildon has been reviewed 3 or 4 times, and I'm not sure whether many members of the Labour group have been present at those times. In fact, possibly just Councillor Davies. But it is something which is a useful tool to all councils. I don't know whether Councillor Callaghan may have conducted a review himself on other authorities. I've conducted a number during the period while I was leader. And it is a very good experience. What it's about, it's not about whether we do things right or wrong, it's whether we can do things better, whether we can learn from others. And when you look at the peer review team, the ones that I've worked on have had 2 or 3 councillors who have normally been leaders or cabinet members, as the case may be, together with independent representatives with specialities in the field, and in this instance would almost certainly be a planning officer from another authority. They look to learn from us as well. And I think what we have to say to ourselves is, are we perfect? Well, I put it to council that no, we're not perfect. Are we good? Maybe we are. Are we mediocre? Possibly. But we have no evidence, we have no benchmark. And this is about getting a benchmark to make sure that we're actually delivering a service in the proper manner and in a good professional manner, both politically and managerially. Excuse me. And members will be aware that there have been concerns from the public as well as members about the scale, the range, the speed of some of the major projects. And there's been concerns about the level of supporting infrastructure that was mentioned earlier on this evening. And, you know, we've seen an example recently where this council chose to cut back contributions to education, for example. Was that a wise thing to do when we hear that we're not getting enough money for a school? Well, you know, I think that's the sort of question that can be answered. There's concerns about the influence of various lobbying companies on the planning process. You know, there are a number of lobby companies that employ councillors, members of parliament and so on. That isn't necessarily a bad thing because they have the experience, but it needs to be reviewed openly. And of course, the review is not just about what goes on in Basildon, it's what goes on in Langdon, in Pitsea, in Wickford, and all right, Billericay is perhaps not so substantially affected by major projects, but nevertheless, it is about the smaller applications, the smaller regeneration, in addition to the big time stuff. So I just want to make sure that the public and members can be confident that we're dealing with these things in the best way possible and following best practice. It might be 100% that that's what we're doing. If it is, we will have an endorsement to say so. Everybody can be confident in the procedures and the process. And of course, it's not just about building, it's about things like enforcement, the use of delegated powers, and they can all be considered as part of the peer review. The point being that the peers would have a free hand to look at whatever they thought was appropriate and wherever they thought they could give advice or guidance. And it might be, as I said earlier, we're doing everything perfectly, but it might not either. And we need to know that. If this council is doing a good job in planning and regeneration, both in its administrative and its political aspects, then we have nothing to fear by having a peer review. If we're not, then that peer review can bring us some lessons to learn. And I can only say to you that in the past, we have learnt from peer reviews, as indeed of the other authorities which I've been involved with, which have also been subject of reviews themselves. So it's pretty straightforward. I can't see any reason why a member would wish to object. So let's just get it done. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. And I believe that you have a seconder in Councillor Baggott. Is that right? Councillor Baggott, you have 5 minutes to second. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I second this motion, and there is a theme here from where we've come from in opposition. I'm not surprised that Councillor Callaghan has withdrawn his motion once he's seen our amendment, for instance. The whole point is that what we have said right the way from the get-go, that when you're dealing with ambitious projects, when you're dealing with the rate of change that this administration says it's dealing with, that it's actually good practice to make sure that you get it right. In any sector out there that's not local government, there is a methodology which allows people and departments to challenge themselves, to ask, could we do better? How might we improve in the way we go about our business? And the opportunity there is to learn from anything that comes out of it in order to be better. And in local government, being better usually translates to being able to reduce the tax burden on residents. So the question is, why would you not? Well, I can give you a number of reasons why you wouldn't from this administration, an administration that doesn't want scrutiny, that doesn't want anybody looking at anything that's going on independently, that has blocked a number of requests at a number of times for having that independent objection, or sorry, that independent view. So will they object? Possibly, because they would rather actually just spin out fake news on social media than actually have anybody look at what is actually going on within the council itself. Now, I don't expect the administration to support this because, as I say, they've demonstrated they're arrogant, they've demonstrated they know better than residents, and they've demonstrated the fact that in their world, they can't learn anything from anybody. But the reality is we can. And this is a real opportunity for an administration that talks about transparency to say, okay, let's actually show that we do believe in transparency. Let's agree to this peer review. And when we have the peer review, let's take it on the chin in the areas where we've got it wrong, and let's build on the areas we've got it right, because that translates ultimately to a better service and a better result for the residents of this borough. And why would anybody vote against something which is better for the residents of this borough? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baggott. Councillor Sargent, you have up to 5 minutes. Do you still wish to speak, Councillor Sargent?
No, I don't wish to speak on this one. Sorry.
You don't wish to speak on this one. No worries. Councillor Smith, I shall call next. Councillor Smith.
Hold on, Mr. Mayor, I agree with all this, and I don't know if the Labour or the Wickford Independents support this. It makes sense. I mean, I disregarded a lot of what Councillor Baggott said because he was trying to goad the administration into voting against it. But I listened to what Councillor Malcolm Buckley said. He made sense. As the Stasi said, if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. I have no problem supporting this. So I was hoping he was going to call Cat the leader in first to say what he wanted, but I would like to ask the question, that the question be put we vote on it and move on. I think there's unanimous support for it. So can the question be put, please, Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Smith, I would like to allow a few more speakers before the question be put. We've only had a few speakers so far, so I'll be allowing a few more speakers firstly. Councillor Schrader, I shall call next. Councillor Schrader, do you still wish to speak? These are the pre-indicated speakers.
Sorry, I don't think I indicated on this one. No.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to remind Councillor Smith, once you've spoken, you can't move the question be put, and I'm sure you would have noticed that, Mr. Mayor. Has to be someone who hasn't spoken. Can I say this? I'm fully in support of what Councillor Buckley's moved. I think it's a damn good idea. I'm confident, personally, what the peer challenge will come out and conclude. But I think it's important we do this. It is a form of scrutiny, which is important, and I accept and I will vote and support the motion.
Hold on, still muted. Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Dadge, do you still wish to speak?
It must be a hand from previous because I haven't indicated.
That's fine. I'm only
Thank you,
going on
Mr.
the thank you, Councillor Dadge. I'm only going on the pre-indicated speakers from that were sent by your leader. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Mayor. I regret that I don't really have a clue what Councillor Baggott was talking about. Pretty much all of it, but particularly the bit about an amendment or something. But I'm sure it will become clear at some point what he's talking about. I wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Buckley's motion. The Labour Party will support it this evening, and I actually commend him for giving us all the opportunity to debate a bit of substance rather than the usual smear campaigns that we get from the opposition when it comes to this stuff. I completely agree with him that challenge is good. I have never done a peer challenge. I don't know if he has. I'm had quite a bit on with COVID and regenerating Basildon, to be perfectly honest. But for people who have been out and able to do these peer reviews, I've only heard good things about them. So again, I'm absolutely clear. And one of the things that I would like the peer challenge to look at is the development of a protocol for councillors. There is not a day that goes by when I'm sure, whatever colour your rosette, you are not seeing on social media people talking about backhanders that councillors are taking and brown envelopes and all of this stuff. And I think that what we would do well to do here is produce a protocol, because again, the smear campaigns against myself and Councillor McGarren that we've had rehearsed previously at this committee. But I know for a fact that, you know, members of the opposition have met with developers and met with consultants without officers being present. Is that right? Is that wrong? We should have a protocol about that. And it should be clear what is right and what isn't wrong. Is there best practice in the market around a register so that a full register is kept of which developers and which consultants people are seeing, and whether that's opposition members or whether that is the administration. All of my meetings with developers are done with officers present, and I'm sure other members do likewise, and that stood before I was leader, and when I was a backbencher in Pitsea, I did the same. So I absolutely welcome that challenge, and contrary to popular belief and what you might hear tonight, I instigated challenge for our officers in the last 12 months. So we have had a review, not done by the LGA, but by somebody else, to look at the robustness of our senior leadership team 2 years on from where we were in terms of that restructure. That was a very good exercise. It was a very challenging exercise, and I think it was the right thing to do. We've also, as a council, forged a lot of links with some other councils. So earlier on tonight, we debated community governance reviews. We formed a very good partnership with Swindon Borough Council, Conservative-run Swindon Borough Council, to talk about what they had done on parishing. And they've been very good at providing us with support about our ideas for parishing. when it came to regeneration, more so of Wickford, where we're taking forward the biggest regeneration of Wickford, putting more money into Wickford than any administration for 25 years. We teamed up with Trafford Council and we spoke to Trafford about what they'd particularly done with Altrincham, which is a very similar sized town to Wickford, and what was the art of the possible there. So again, I have no problems with it. And I think that what it will do, as I say, is it will give us an opportunity to debate substance rather than to debate smears. And I also think it will give us an opportunity to really talk about the absolute Champions League level officers that we have here in this borough. Because our regeneration team, our planning team, are absolutely superb. And I don't think we could get anyone better than what we have. And when you think about the evolution and the trajectory that we've gone in terms of the regeneration, in terms of attracting investment, in terms of getting real tangible planning applications that actually finally get infrastructure money on the table for this borough, that has been because we've now got an officer team who go into bat for Basildon every single day. And I think that, anybody who comes to the Town Centre Revival Committee will see for themselves that all of those officers in Tom Ash's team, whether they be in planning, whether they be in regeneration, they are fully on top of this brief. And if we can fine tune those officers, and if we can get even another 5% out of those officers, then this borough is in an incredibly strong position to take things forward. So look, I commend Councillor Buckley for doing something that not every member of the opposition do, which is to table a sensible motion that can get cross-party support, that can really help the council move forward. And it has the full support of my group, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Councillor Dadge, you're now indicating to speak, although you said you didn't wish to speak earlier. I think there's been sufficient debate on this matter now, so we shall move to Councillor Buckley to wind up. Councillor Buckley, you have 5 minutes.
Or Dadsley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry. Hopefully I'm unmuted now. Thank you for that. And that's been a very positive reception to this motion. And I welcome that. And it does make a change, as Councillor Callaghan says, to see what appears to be all parties in agreement on something which not only will help the authority itself, but will also be of benefit to all of our residents, because whether that's an improved productivity internally, whether it's just an improvement in the way things are done, the community as a whole will benefit. And I think just addressing the brief points that were made during the discussion, obviously Councillor Baggett's basic point was, let's get it right. And I don't think anybody could argue with that. Councillor Smith, I welcome the support there. Councillor Harrison, I think also sees the benefits of it. And I know obviously Councillor Harrison has, like myself, been around this authority on and off for probably more years than he cares to count. So we have seen one or two things happen there that we've learnt from. Councillor Callaghan, I do appreciate that during the year of COVID, for the leader of the council to go off and do a review would have been an extreme challenge, but purely from a point of view of personal development, I would commend you to do it when you get the opportunity to do so. And if you look at some of the authorities that I've been to a large authority up north, which was a unitary, one of the city authorities. Very, very interesting the way things happen there. That wasn't focused particularly on planning, but seeing the range of services and the even bigger range of challenges that particular authority had, and then to relatively wealthy authorities in East Anglia. So it is something which I think is beneficial to you personally, but you bring that experience back to Basildon, and certainly that's what I felt happened whilst I was leader. I wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Callaghan's comment about brown envelopes and backhanders. In all the time I've been in this council, I have never once thought that anybody had taken a backhander or a brown envelope, member or officer. I have no doubt whatsoever that the people involved all have had the fullest integrity, and I would not wish anybody to think anything different of that. We may disagree with their decisions, but that's perfectly okay. Whether that means we need a protocol to satisfy the public that doesn't happen, I don't know. Like Councillor Callaghan, I've met with many developers in the past. Vast majority of cases, yes, with officers. I have met a couple of developers without officers because they happen to have been members of my political party, and we happen to meet on a range of issues. And that particularly happens in Wickford, where, as you know, part of the town is in the borough of Chelmsford, or now the city of Chelmsford. So it is important. Bottom line is we can see improvements because none of us is perfect, like it or not. And I just say I'm gratified by the support and the reception that this motion has had. And I think everybody will see after the review is undertaken, it has been to the benefit of the borough. There is a lot of learning to be taken from it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. And on that note, we move to the vote on motion A. If all members could turn on their cameras, please. Okay, are all members of the Conservative group present? They are. Councillor Baggott, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
I do.
And how do you wish to vote?
For.
Do any members of the Conservative group wish to vote differently? No? Excellent. Are all members of the Labour group present? They are. Councillor Callaghan, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
Yes, and we're in favour.
In favour. Any member of the Labour group wish to vote differently? No? Okay, Councillor Smith, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
Yes, and for.
And for. And do any members of the Independent group wish to vote differently? No? Councillor Harrison, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
I vote for myself, in favour.
In favour. And Councillor Brockman, how do you wish to vote?
Yeah, I vote in favour.
In favour, thank you. Councillor Hollyman, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
No, just me, and in favour.
In favour. And Councillor Blake, how do you wish to vote?
In favour.
In favour, thank you. Councillor Fellows, how do you wish to vote?
In favour.
In favour. It's unanimous with 41 votes for. Thank you, councillors. We now move on to motion C, and I call Councillor Smith to present the motion. Councillor, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't need to rattle on. It's a plain and straightforward motion. I'd like to thank Mr. Lewis Fripp, one of the private hire vehicle drivers in the borough, for raising this to my attention, along with many other private hire vehicle drivers in the borough. I shall read out my original motion, and I understand Councillor Blake would like it to be adjusted, and I accept his adjustment. So I shall read out, Mr. Mayor, the adjustment that's going to be made, and that is changing the word leader to the chairman of the licensing committee. So I shall read out the motion that I'm adjusting and put forward to members, and I shall speak about it. Council calls on the Highway Authority, Essex County Council, to permit Basildon's licensed private hire taxis to be able to fully use Southernhay, Langdon Link and Long Riding. Council also calls on Councillor Kevin Bentley, that's the Cabinet Member for Highways, to visit Basildon and meet with the Chairman of Licensing and the taxi trade to discuss this situation. So that's the motion I'm putting forward to members tonight, and I happily accept Councillor Kevin Blake's adjustment, I should say. So why am I putting this forward? I mean, Southernhay just about comes into my ward. Technically, it doesn't, but it affects my ward. Long Riding obviously is in St Martin's ward, and the Langdon Link is obviously an issue in St Lee Chapel North ward. Now, as members know, I'm not one of these people who sit there going, oh, great, we've got a new green tax. Oh, You know, think of the poor polar bears. I'm a climate change skeptic and I'll wear that badge of pride. But one thing I strongly believe in, that everybody should have clean air. Be it an electric car where they touch the brake pads, they're pumping out particulates which are bad for human health, or fossil fuel powered cars, they put out particulates into the air which is harmful to human health. We've seen cases in the London boroughs where someone's tragically died a couple of years ago because of pollution from vehicles. And when you think with Southern Hay, you've got one of the most densely populated streets in the borough, 350 flats at Trafford House. I don't know how many there are in the Icon because that's not in my ward. And then, of course, Morello Quarter, Cherry Down East, with nearly 450 flats. On a hot summer's day, they want to open their windows. So anything we can do to cut down vehicle movement and improve the air quality is good for human health. So why must private hire vehicles have to do the Tour de Basildon for a fare paying passenger? It just doesn't make any sense. And then from the passenger's perspective, they legitimately jump into a private hire vehicle and they say to the driver, why are you taking me this way round? It's quicker to go down Southern A. The sign says taxis. And when the cab driver explains, I'm a private hire vehicle, they went, but you're a taxi. Because the tax-paying public do not choose to know all the particular legalities of the licensing trade around cabs. All the fare-paying passenger knows is there's a sign saying taxis, but private hire vehicles can't go down there. So I'm asking, Mr. Mayor, that all members support this. I think like the park night lighting vote we had, if we can show Essex County Council this has got all member support, we're going to have a really good positive case to put to the Cabinet Member for Highways at Essex County Council to say, look, you just need to make this minor tweak and it will be good for the fare-paying passengers and it will improve the air quality and health of the residents of Basildon. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. And you have a seconder in Councillor Callaghan, I believe. Councillor Callaghan, firstly, are you happy to second based on the adjustment that Councillor Smith is proposing?
More than happy to delegate work, Mr. Mayor.
Absolutely. You have 5 minutes, Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Smith has quite rightly articulated many of the issues that our drivers face. I held a Zoom call just before Christmas with our taxi drivers, our private hire vehicle drivers, and they talked about that awkward moment where their integrity is questioned in their car by people who think that they're trying to take them on a longer journey than necessary in order to score some more money out of their passengers, when of course that is not the case. They're just not allowed to go forward in the way that it is being suggested in this motion. I wrote to Councillor Kevin Bentley on the 11th of January. I asked him to reconsider this policy. He wrote back to me on the 29th of January and he said no. And I think what we're doing here is we're trying to get a basic level of fairness and parity, because these guys are allowed to do this in many other parts of the county of Essex, but here in Basildon they're not. And that doesn't seem right or fair for those drivers. So it's about basic levels of fairness. These guys pay enough in fees, they pay enough in badges, they should be able to use all of those lanes. It would speed up journeys, and quite rightly, as Councillor Smith has alluded to, we are facing a real crisis in the borough where we still to this day have the sword of Damocles hanging over the heads of our residents and our businesses with this congestion charge, this clean air charging zone on the A127. And that charging zone hasn't gone away. The minister wrote to me not so long ago to say it hasn't gone away. And here we are, in partnership with the county council, we're trying to take steps to reduce vehicle emissions. We're trying to take steps to reduce the length of journeys. And for some bureaucratic reason, we are not able to, to achieve that. And I think that that's a huge mistake. We know that there is the second waste plant being planned for Pitsea Northwest, a huge incinerator with tons of lorries of people's waste coming into Pitsea every single day. that is going to have a massively detrimental impact on the air quality in Basildon already. And here is a solution, albeit a small one, but it is a solution to some of that. So I am completely in agreement with Councillor Smith. I take on board Councillor Blake's amendment. I don't see any reason why that can't be included in this. As I say, I've taken this up myself already with Councillor Bentley, and whomever is the leader or the cabinet member after the elections in May at County Hall, I urge them to engage more constructively on this issue than we've had in the past, because this is important for our private hire vehicle drivers, and I fully support it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. So just to confirm, Councillor Smith is happy to alter his motion to read in the final line to meet with the chair of the licensing committee and the taxi trade to discuss this situation. I'm hoping that we move this alteration without a vote. If any member is opposed to that, please can you show now? Okay, so we are now debating the altered motion as I've just quoted. Councillor Blake, would you still like to come in and speak?
Yes, please, Mayor. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Smith, for taking on the advice I gave. And I have to say, this does show that actually letting groups, where all parties, have the amendment beforehand gives them a chance to debate it and look at it in a positive way. It's not the first time this happened. It happened last time with the budget setting as well, regarding the rat catcher, as people have called it, as Councillor Smith calls it. And I do, only thing I would question on it is that, and I will be honest with you, I'm not blue on blue as regarding member of the Conservative Party now, although I am a Maggie Blue. What I will say is I'm not Kevin Bentley's biggest fan, but I'm sure if you'd actually spoke to him, this might not have needed to have been put in as a motion. I'm sure he might have listened, but none more for that. Thank you for taking on board that was said, and it does show that even in opposition, you are listening in this administration. You are listening to opposition members. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. And Councillor Hollyman, did you still wish to speak on this matter?
No, I think we've done that one, Mayor.
Thank you very much. I'll call the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Fellows.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A small but a significant point is Councillor Smith and I share the Nethermain ward, and he will know that the recent changes to the routes around Basildon cause significant problems and issues, with several head-on collisions. It was very badly signposted to begin with, and I would ask that if this goes ahead, it should be well communicated, and if any traffic signs, street furniture needs to be installed, that is also included. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Fellows. Councillor Buckley, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of brief points, really. On these, I'm going to call them bus lanes, but on these gateways, there is an issue. I'm in favour of allowing taxis and private hire cars to go through them. However, there is an issue, and I think that's something that needs to be addressed by Councillor Smith before actually having any discussions directly with the Cabinet Member for Highways. And that's the one of identification, because with the orange and white, it's fine. They're very clearly identifiable as licensed vehicles, licensed by Basildon Borough Council. With the private hire fleet, they are not. They can be white, they can be blue, they can be green, they can be black. So they're not readily identifiable. Would we also allow private hire vehicles from other boroughs to use those busways? Frequently, we see vehicles licensed from Uttlesford, with particularly used for school transport. But we see vehicles from Castle Point, Chelmsford, all come into our borough from time to time. Should we preclude them from using those gateways or not? I think it is a discussion that could be had with the chairman, with the cabinet member. But there has been a simple opportunity which has been on offer for as long as I've been on the county council, and that is when these issues arise, for any county member to go and visit the surgery, although obviously it's a virtual surgery at the moment, with the cabinet member. I used to be deputy cabinet member to one of the previous highway cabinet members, and we used to meet every Tuesday and meet with other members who had highway problems of one sort or another. Almost every one of those got resolved when the member came to see us. If you just want to put something on a paper to say, I've done it, well, that's not going to get the message across to the cabinet member. So I would urge Councillor Smith, I don't have an issue with the motion as such, but I would urge Councillor Smith to arrange, might have to be after the elections now, but to arrange to meet with the cabinet member, with a representative or representatives of the trade, and you'll probably find he will get a far better reception than he would just by putting a motion to this council, which is never going to get through to the cabinet member. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. And during your speech, I've had a point of order. Councillor Callaghan has asked that the question be put. Councillor Callaghan, do you have a seconder? Councillor Smith. Okay. If all members can please turn on the cameras. Can we confirm all Conservative members are present? I'm just waiting for Councillor Jeffrey and Councillor Turner. Councillor Moore. Is he on the meeting? Oh, and Councillor Moore. Councillor Moore, if you could turn on your camera, please. I'll just give one moment while members attempt to get in touch with Councillor Moore, please. Ring, ring. Here we go. We have Councillor Moore. Okay, Councillor Baggett, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group? If you can unmute Councillor Baggett.
I do.
And how do you wish to vote?
I'm not aware of anybody that does want to speak, but we vote against.
Against, thank you. All members of the Labour. Oh, do any members of the Conservative group wish to vote differently? No. Are all members of the Labour group present?
Yes, and we vote in favour, Mr. Mayor.
And you vote in favour. All cameras are on. Good. Thank you. Any members of the Labour group wish to vote differently? No. Thank you. Councillor Smith, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
Yes, and for.
For. And do any members of the independent group wish to vote differently? No. Councillor Harrison, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
On behalf of myself, in favour.
In favour. Councillor Brockman, do you wish to vote differently? Oh, sorry. How do you wish to vote, Councillor Brockman? We can unmute you.
Sorry, I was being blocked. I'm voting for.
You're voting for. Thank you, Councillor Brockman. Councillor Holliman, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
On behalf of myself and for.
For. And Councillor Blake, how do you wish to vote?
Seeing as Craig wanted to speak, I should vote against.
Against, thank you. Councillor Fellows, how do you wish to vote?
In favour.
In favour.
No, this question be put.
Okay, with 22 votes for and 19 votes against, it's been carried and the question will now be put. So Councillor Smith, you now have up to 5 minutes to wind up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to be really quick because the next motion is really important. This is why I voted for this. I think this has got unanimous support because we want to really hear David Kirkland's motion that follows mine. There's a couple of brief points I want to pick up on. In 2019, myself, Councillor Callaghan, Councillor McGurran, with our team, met with Councillor Bentley and another cabinet member called Councillor Ball, who many of you will know and respect. We tried to explain about the situation with converting Cherrydale East to two-way and the problems it would create with private hire vehicles in Southern A. He only listened to what we had to say, and it was like, it's happening, meeting closed. So that's why we felt the need to have this motion. The leader has made representations. It's a pretty sure bet, as we're talking about the May elections. Councillor Bentley at Essex is likely to be elevated. So we may get a new cabinet member, hopefully in the spirit of Rodney Bass, plain speaking, and tells it like it is, and hopefully will support our motion. So I think that's pretty much it. The private hire vehicles do a fantastic trade and their customers. And one last final question Councillor Buckley raised about private hire vehicles from outside the borough. We're about to have one of the largest cinemas done under your watch being built in the town centre outside of London. And if someone from Corringham, Grays, Brentwood wants to see the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle films, if that's their bag, and come to Basel and sit on the big screen, they're going to get a cab down here. And obviously anything to cut down pollution, great thing. So that would be my concern. But that point is to be picked up really by this meeting with the chair of licensing and the Basildon taxi trade to clarify that particular point, because the taxi trade we have should have their say. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. And we now move to the vote on motion D. If all members could please turn on their cameras. Okay, just Councillor Turner, please. Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Baggott, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
I do.
And how do you wish to vote?
We vote for.
And do any members of the Conservative group wish to vote differently? No. Oh, great. Councillor Rimmer, how do you wish to vote? If we can unmute.
Abstain.
Abstain. Thank you, Councillor Rimmer. Are all members of the Labour group present? Yes, they are. Councillor Callaghan, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
And how do you wish to vote?
We are united in our support for the taxi trade. We vote in favour.
You vote in favour. And do any members of the Labour group wish to vote differently? No. Councillor Smith, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
Yes, and for clean air and better value for our residents, we're voting in favour.
Voting in favour. And do any members of your group wish to vote differently? No. Councillor Harrison, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
On behalf of myself, in favour.
In favour. Councillor Brockman, how do you wish to vote?
As a user of one of these, I vote in favour.
In favour. Councillor Hollyman, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
Just for me, Mayor, in favour.
In favour. Councillor Blake, how do you wish to vote?
In favour.
And Councillor Fellows, how do you wish to vote?
In favour.
In favour. So with 40 members in favour and 1 abstention, the motion has been carried. We now move on to motion D, and I call Councillor Kirkman to move the motion. Councillor, you have up to 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The whole country owes a debt of gratitude to our key workers, and in particular frontline NHS staff for their hard work during this pandemic, putting themselves in harm's way to keep the rest of us safe. I'm sure all members will agree with me that our NHS is arguably the best healthcare system in the world, effective and free at the point of need. In particular, I pay tribute to staff at Basildon Hospital for their sterling work, as it has taken COVID patients from across the county. No easy task, I can only imagine. Unfortunately, due to chronic underfunding and pointless reorganisations, it is now at breaking point. But Mr Mayor, the announcement to cap Agenda for Change staff pay rises at 1%, in effect a real terms pay cut, is the straw that breaks the camel's back. Already battling critical staff shortages, further pay restrictions will only exacerbate this situation and cause more nurses to leave the NHS for good. Elected Conservatives across this country, as well as others, came out on their doorstep and clapped for our NHS, and rightly so. But clapping does not pay ever-increasing bills. With RPI at 1.6%, this is absolutely a reduction in real terms. What the Conservative government has done shows that they merely pay lip service to our NHS staff, and when it comes to really showing appreciation by paying a wage they deserve, they simply put the boot in. I hope that all members call on the government to revisit this decision and come up with a pay offer that truly reflects the value of our NHS staff. The Basden Borough Alliance stands by all residents of the borough, and this is especially true for our key workers. Through our development company, Semper Homes, we have built 65 homes and supplied them to key workers living in the borough. But we will not stop there. We will build many, many more in the years ahead. While ultimately the power to grant a pay rise to our NHS staff lies with the government, we as a council can recognise and support our NHS staff wherever we can, and I am proud that the Basden Borough Alliance does this. The highest honour that Basden Borough Council can grant is that of the freedom of the borough, and I'm delighted this evening to propose that the Mayor of Basden brings forward nominations for NHS organisations within the borough to an extraordinary council meeting before AGM on the 27th of May. I would urge all members to show full appreciation for our key workers by backing this motion tonight. They look after us, so we should look after them. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kirkman. And you have a seconder in Councillor Reid, is that correct? Councillor Reid, if you'd like to second the motion, you have up to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to second this important motion. Our brilliant NHS workers are getting us through this crisis. They are caring for our loved ones and they are leading the vaccination efforts. This is an insulting way to reward their services. This is an absolute insult to hard-working NHS staff who have not only worked through the years of austerity and cuts, but are right now on the front line battling a global pandemic and keeping services afloat. The Royal College of Nursing, the Chief Executive and General Secretary, Dame Donna Kinnear, has described the 1% recommendations as pitiful and bitterly disappointing. She said that the government is dangerously out of touch with nursing staff, NHS workers and the public. The government should hang their heads in shame, go back to the drawing board and come up with the kind of pay rise that matches the astonishing efforts staff have gone to in the past year. This boils down to political choices, Mr Mayor. The government has chosen to spend hundreds of millions on outsourcing our failed test and trace system and on dodgy PPE contracts. They have chosen not to fund the money to give our nurses, our paramedics and other NHS workers a fair pay rise. I second this motion, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. I think that the next person to indicate was Councillor Schrader. Councillor Schrader, over to you. You have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I welcome the motion moved by Councillor Kirkman. It's a shame that neither he nor Councillor Reid actually spoke to it. They seem to have thought they moved a motion about something completely different. But in the wake of COVID-19, the people of this borough and the whole country owe our NHS and all our key workers an enormous debt of gratitude. We've seen that across the piece in our public services, voluntary and charity organisations, as well as the private sector also. But Councillor Kirkman is, of course, quite right to draw particular attention to the outstanding contribution of staff across our NHS, and he correctly points out their heroic service, and in particular the staff at Basildon Hospital. Now, of course, in the finest traditions of Labour motions at full council, it is a shame that he couldn't quite resist the temptation to insert a somewhat discordant partisan note, which he's now led upon, both he and Councillor Reid in their speeches, but it won't prevent me from supporting the motion tonight. I certainly wish the government could have offered NHS staff more than 1%. Heck, I wish we could double NHS pay. As a public sector worker myself, public sector pay freezes are not something of which I'm inordinately fond, but I've accepted mine with relative alacrity, and this, of course, was not a pay freeze. The 1% is on top of the 12% increase NHS staff received over the last few years, and the Prime Minister himself has said that we're in tough times, but the government has tried to give them as much as they can at the present time, and this will, of course, be looked at by an independent pay review body in due course. In the meantime, I certainly think that any recognition we can offer as civic leaders to celebrate the amazing work being done by the NHS and other key workers is to be welcomed, and it's for that reason that I'll be voting for the motion as published to bring forward nominations of NHS organisations for freedom of the borough. I will, of course, be banging the drum for Basildon Hospital, where I had the great honour and privilege of being a governor for some years. Indeed, I served on the Council of Governors alongside former Councillor Sandra Hillier. It remains an institution very dear to my heart, and I would love to see it join the ranks of the Royal Anglian Regiment in becoming corporately a freeman of the borough. So I will completely ignore the slightly odd comments that didn't seem to have any bearing on the motion as published, and I will vote for the motion to recognise the NHS with freedom of the borough, and I hope we can bring forward some other voluntary and charitable organisations that I think would also be worthy of similar recognition. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Schrader. And members will no doubt be very sad to hear that we have now hit the guillotine. Therefore, I'll now call Councillor Kirkman to wind up. Councillor Kirkman, you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to Andrew Schrader for supporting the motion, and nothing further to add. So I'd like to put it to the vote, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kirkman. And if all members could now please turn the cameras on, we shall move to the vote on motion D. Can we confirm that all Conservative members are present? Councillor Baggott, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
I do.
And how do you wish to vote?
We vote for.
And do any Conservative members wish to vote differently? No? Okay, are all members of the Labour group present? Excellent, thank you. Councillor Callaghan, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and we're in favour.
In favour. Do any members of the Labour group wish to vote differently? No. Councillor Smith, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We shall be voting for, as a group, for this amendment. Brilliant.
Thank you. And do any members of the independent group wish to vote differently? No. Councillor Harrison, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
Vote for myself, in favour.
In favour. And Councillor Brockman, how do you wish to vote?
I vote in favour.
In favour, thank you. Councillor Hollyman, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
Just myself, in favour.
And how do you wish to vote, Councillor Blake?
Abstain.
Abstain. Councillor Fellows, how do you wish to vote?
Happy to vote in favour.
In favour, thank you. With 40 votes for and 1 abstention, the motion is carried. We have one final motion to deal with, which is motion E. Councillor Ferguson, do you wish this motion to be put to the vote, withdrawn, or carried forward to the next meeting of full council?
Mr. Mayor, I think we should put this motion to the vote.
And do you have a seconder? Councillor Ferguson, do you have a
I
seconder?
believe Councillor McGurran is seconding the.
Councillor McGurran, thank you. Okay, if all members can please turn on their cameras. Thank you. And all members of the Conservative group are present. Yes. Councillor Baggott, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
I do.
And how do you wish to vote?
Against.
Against. Do any members of the Conservative group wish to vote differently? No. Are all members of the Labour group present? Yes. Councillor Callaghan, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
Yes, I do.
And how do you wish to vote?
We want Basildon's infrastructure money back. We're in favour.
In favour. And do any members of the Labour group wish to vote differently? No. Councillor Smith, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
Yes, I shall be voting on behalf of my group.
And how do you wish to vote?
Says yes.
In favour. And do any of your group members wish to vote differently? No. Councillor Harrison, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
I vote for myself, definitely in favour.
In favour. Councillor Brockman, how do you wish to vote?
Absolutely in favour, plus interest.
In favour, thank you. Councillor Blake, if you could turn your camera on for me, please. And Councillor Hollyman, do you wish to vote on behalf of your group?
Just me, abstain.
Abstain. And Councillor Blake, how do you wish to vote?
14, abstain.
Abstain. And Councillor Fellows, how do you wish to vote?
Certainly in favour.
In favour. So with 21 votes for, 18 against and 2 abstentions, the motion has been carried. Members, there are no emergency motions to deal with this evening. I just want to wish you all keep safe and well. Enjoy your appropriate election campaigns, and we will see you all back here on, or some of you back here on the 27th of May. Thank you, members. Take care.